We're going to be on for you.
Ever wondered what makes TV so powerful in Jamaica? Time to find out.
What's happening with the storm right now. Obviously, get you the latest updates as to the thinking of the storm and the intensity and the timing, and then bring you some live reports from the island as well, amongst other areas that will be impacted by Melissa as we go over the next couple of days. Media Mundo is sponsored by the leading law firm of Central Florida, your hometown homeowners insurance attorneys, offering free consultation and policy reviews. They'll walk you through every step of the insurance claim process. They do cover the entire state of Florida. You get damage of any kind, go to leanonmelaw.com for more information. We appreciate them being sponsor of the channel to support us in the cause for what we're doing. I'm going to take a couple of seconds here, let a couple more folks join the chat before we move in. I imagine, of course, we're going to get a lot of folks in from Jamaica and other areas. First thing I want to say is our thoughts are with you guys. We're going to walk you through this. I'm going to do the best that I can to give you the pertinent information, and we'll discuss, again, the likely impacts from this storm. And then we'll obviously break down not only what's going to be happening in Jamaica, but for other areas where this storm could still be either a major hurricane or a powerful hurricane as it accelerates to the north and to the east over the next 48 to 72 hours as well. If you're watching in the area of Jamaica, let us know in the comment section below where you're viewing from, what's been happening with the weather so far. But I can tell you that obviously now that we're beginning to see the north turn from Melissa, the impacts are only going to get worse and worse through the remainder of this Monday, especially by this evening and overnight and through portions of Tuesday as well. You can see the statistics on the top of your screen. This is from the 2 p.m. intermediate advisory. We will get a full advisory coming up at the top of the hour. So in less than a half hour, we're going to have brand new information to pass along to everyone. But friends, the numbers that you see on the top of your screen are mind-boggling, they're jaw-dropping, and they're sobering. Melissa right now has maximum sustained winds of 175 miles an hour with gusts that are approaching 200 miles an hour. The pressure continues to plummet. It's down to 906 millibars. If you remember from last night's live stream, I showed you the half-same model, which was the most aggressive. And by landfall, it had it as a 913 millibar pressure storm. And it's even exceeded that already. As has been the case, when these storms get like this the last several years, the models just can't hold up on their explosive development. Again, the lower the number and the pressure, the stronger the storm, right? And it's still creeping. It's agonizingly slow right now, west-northwest at just 3 miles an hour. A slow forward progress uptick, if you will, in acceleration is likely the remainder of today, and especially as we go overnight and into Tuesday. So it will likely pick up some forward speed. The other thing with this storm is how big it is. This storm is large. The hurricane force winds extend more than 30 miles from the center of circulation, and the tropical storm force winds extend more than 200 miles from the center. The numbers that you see are wind gusts in miles an hour, and as you can see, we're starting to get more consistent 40-plus mile-an-hour winds in the Kingston area, and even
There's something about a kid's
from the Hurricane Center as of last look. We'll continue to monitor, obviously, literally minute by minute, the progression of this storm, right? Now, exactly where landfall occurs has some bearing on what we're going to see. But unfortunately, the wind field is so expansive with this storm that even well away from the center, catastrophic impacts with wind, rain, and storm surge are likely through a lot of Jamaica. You have to take this storm as seriously as you've taken any storm. You should already be done with preparations. You should be sheltering in place and letting this storm pass by with whatever it's going to bring to your area. There's not much more that can be done at this point in time, as conditions are really going to be going downhill fairly quickly. Now, as of note, right, we're looking at the center, which is just this classic monster hurricane, right? About a 10 nautical mile wide eye, the lightning strikes, which are proficient within this storm. There was so much turbulence that the NOAA Hurricane Reconnaissance aircraft that was out investigating this had to exit the storm, which is very rare. Those aircraft are hardened and ready to fly through these monster hurricanes, and they had to abort early, but they found a pressure of 906 millibars before they did. Now, if you look in the short term, you're going to see jogs within this eye. When a storm is going this slowly, right, it is not going to go on a smooth path. We've seen wobbles to the north. We've seen wobbles to the west. Now, obviously, in the last hour or two, you're seeing a little bit of a wobble towards the west. Again, you know, I don't want anyone to get their hopes up that this is just trying to shoot off towards the west. It is slightly west of this center. It's still in the cone of uncertainty, and down the road, we are still expecting this to make a jog back to the north and to the east. And we will look at all of these models, right? But there will be potentially a slight shift west when we get to 5 o'clock advisory. But I promise you now, unfortunately, they're still going to be calling for a landfall on Jamaica on Tuesday, right? And we need to prepare for the worst, right? Even if this scrapes the island on the western side, we continue to see, Melissa, the worst part of the storm on the east side be over the island for the longest period of time, right? So the most significant rain and the most significant winds are on the east side. So, you know, in some ways, right, exactly where this passes has very little impact on some areas as far as what you're going to see. And whether this makes landfall with winds near 175, and God, I hope it doesn't. But even if it drops down, going an eye wall replacement cycle all the way down to something like 140, remember, the practical impacts are still likely to be about the same. We mentioned this in yesterday's live stream, and I hope you understand this, that if a building is going to fail with 160 mile an hour winds, it's likely to fail in 140 mile an hour winds and likely to fail in 120 mile an hour winds as well. A little bit farther west track might spare the far eastern third of the island with the sustained hurricane force winds. That's the one difference that I would see if, rather than tracking closer to western portions of Manchester or southeastern Elizabeth parishes, the center of circulation goes over Westmoreland parishes. And obviously within that inter-eye wall, when we're talking about these winds, they could be quite significant as they go over higher terrain. These winds are likely to be extremely significant as well and catastrophic. This is the radar from Jamaica, where we clearly see the eye. Again, all of the heaviest rain and the strongest winds are on the northeast side, and that is beginning to spread over the island, beginning east and southeast and beginning to work its way to the north and to the west. And again, if you guys are in the chat right now, let me know in the comment section below exactly what you guys are saying. And I promise you, we're going to cover everyone, including the areas down the road that are going to be impacted by this storm. But significant, steadier rain and tropical storm force winds will begin building over the island the remainder of this Monday. Landfall may not be until daybreak tomorrow morning, right? It might be a while. As I said, it's still moving agonizingly slow at this point in time. Let's take a look at a couple of other things here real quickly. Let's make sure that I've got what I want to show you here. Okay, so as of the 2 o'clock advisory, and again, we'll get the 5 o'clock advisory and we'll see if this changed. Hurricane warning obviously continues for Jamaica and southeast sides of Cuba. Melissa is likely to impact southeast Cuba late on Tuesday and throughout the day on Wednesday. And now there's a hurricane watch for the southern and central Bahamas and Turks and Caicos. Our friends in these areas need to start preparing for hurricane conditions as we go through our Wednesday, potentially moving through those areas as a Category 2 hurricane, bringing still some very significant wind impacts to that area. It's accelerating as it does so the rainfall flood threat is a little bit lower. That doesn't mean we couldn't see some excessive rainfall in the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos through Wednesday, but more concerned about the wind right now. Tropical storm warning continues for southern Haiti and the Cuban province of Las Tunas, a little bit north of where we have our hurricane warning. When we take a look at potential outputs, right, on the models, looking at the newest Google DeepMind that I was able to pull out, we still have 49 of the 50 ensemble members with a direct landfall. Now, I'll monitor this, and we'll get an update a little bit later. We'll see if there's a little bit more of a shift west, but I want to be clear that as we go through the short term, the highest probability by a vast margin is still for a direct landfall. It may not be this far east, but it is likely to be on the western side of the island as a major hurricane. But as large and as destructive as this hurricane is, again, wind impacts are going to be felt well away from the center, well into the eastern side of the island. This is a timing I put together for the most likely arrival of hurricane force conditions. Again, tropical storm conditions are already being felt in a more consistent and persistent way, the southern side of the island, and that will continue to spread across the island the remainder of this Monday, especially into the evening and overnight hours. But by very late tonight and overnight, we'll start to see the first hurricane force sustained winds begin to impact the south central and the southwest sides of the islands. Places like Clarendon and Manchester, St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland parishes will likely feel the hurricane impacts first. The storm surge will be very significant near the center and off to the east. Friends, we're talking like 9 to 13 foot storm surge and higher in some locations. That's above ground level, not even putting into the equation the wave action and the swells and the breakers that will accompany this. There is likely to be a significant and life-threatening wall of water that accompanies Melissa as it moves on shore. Anyone who lives along the southern coastline needs to take that very seriously. If you're told to evacuate, you feel like you need to evacuate, you need to get to higher ground away from the coastline. That is certainly a worthy idea to do. That should have already occurred. But again, you always follow local government and local official messaging on that. And then the storm is likely to turn a little bit to the north and east as it moves across the island through the day on Tuesday, likely exiting the island sometime late afternoon, early evening. The timing is still a little bit up in the air. Again, if it jogs even a little bit farther west for the short term, that's a longer duration before it begins to swing back into the island. So farther west equals pushing the time frame back a little bit farther. If it tries to track more due north in the short term, we'll likely have a little bit earlier landfall on the island. But it's still a bit up in the air. I could see it anywhere from, the wee hours of this Tuesday morning and even a little bit after daybreak on Tuesday. Again, if you live on Jamaica, here's what you need to know. Catastrophic, life-threatening flash flooding has occurred in a couple of spots already and will just become extremely widespread across the island. It is the flash flooding that will be most prominent across the island. The most people will feel the impacts from the flash flooding. The storm surge for the southern coastline along the path of the storm and east will be extremely significant, but even west of that center, it is likely to be exceptional. And again, if we have landfall near the western tip of the island into Westmoreland Parish, that means the vast majority of the southern coastline is on the east side of the storm with the onshore winds for the longest time and the most significant storm surge. Extensive infrastructure damage is expected when you're talking about a hurricane right now that has sustained winds of 175 miles an hour. If I were to, when I was working in Oklahoma City, equate this to a tornado, that is bark stripping off of tree kind of winds. All right. So extensive infrastructure damage is likely. Long duration power outages and communication outages for days, if not weeks. Significant landslides and mudslides into low-lying areas. This could wash away roads and obviously lead to isolation of communities in some areas. So the most extreme impacts are expected across Jamaica beginning very late tonight and then throughout the day on Tuesday. When we look at the potential impacts, I haven't changed this from yesterday, my friends. All looks to still be on track, if you will, because regardless of the intensity, right? Whether it comes in 150, 160 or slightly higher, we're probably going to get that 130 to 160 as far east as the Kingston area. Now, farther west track would put the Kingston area in the lower band of that and potentially even lower than 130. But I'm still expecting hurricane force gusts at the very minimum to get as far east as Kingston and St. Andrew parishes, even if the storm moves into the western side of the island, farther west than what's tracked at least at this point in time. Then you get to the northern side of the island, St. Anne and St. Mary parishes, you're looking at about 120 to 140 mile an hour winds. The rainfall in the eastern side of the island is going to be the most significant, 15 to 30 inches of rain. I hope we don't go higher than that, but I have seen some potential for locally up to 40. I will say the good news is, there's not much good news to glean at any of this, guys, but the European model has backed off a little bit in the maximum rain, but it's still dumping over 2 feet of rain, over 24 inches of rain, right? Well over 500 millimeters of rain as a maximum through a lot of the southern and the eastern side of the island. And again, with this onshore wind, your storm surge is likely to be around 9 to 13 feet. Western side of the island, again, these numbers might have to be elevated It just depends, right? Right now, expecting St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland parishes in that 120 to 140 range. But if the core of the inter-eye winds goes over that part of the island, those numbers will have to be up. And it'll be the same situation for St. James and Hanover parishes, and even east towards Triolani, where 90 to 120 is forecast right now. But I might have to up those numbers if we start seeing a slight shift west with this track over the next 12 hours. Rainfall totals on the western side of the island, 10 to 20 inches, locally up to 25. And again, even on the west side of the storm, a storm surge of 6 to 9 feet and higher is expected in some areas. So when we look at the European rainfall totals, again, through Jamaica, you see a lot of the 12 to 20 inch totals in those colors, those grays to purples to fuchsia colors, with a maximum of 25 inches. Significant life-threatening flooding is also expected in southeast sides of Cuba, from Santiago de Cuba to the Guantanamo Bay area, moving up to the north to the east. Now, once we get into the Atlantic, the forward speed of Melissa should increase, and while we could see 4 to 8 plus inches of rain in some areas, especially the southeast Bahamas, and that will lead to some flooding concerns, the faster speed of Melissa will not put as much water into those areas, including Turks and Caicos. That being said, of course, we will have to deal with the potential for some significant wind impacts there. And again, east side of the storm, if you look at our winds counterclockwise around the storm, that means it's all of an onshore flow anywhere east of the center of circulation. And that's why I expect the battering coastal conditions through a lot of Jamaica, starting now and through the rest of the overnight hours and into tomorrow morning. The interesting thing about this, if you guys have ever been through a hurricane that's been significant, is once the storm passes you to the north and the winds turn back out of the north, it actually takes all of the water, pushes it back out of all the bays. So you actually go from a significant flood to, in some areas, being just mud flats. I've seen it happen several times. Now, let's take a look at the rest of what's going to be happening, and then I've got some videos to show you guys. We do have that hurricane warning for the southeast sides of Cuba. Look, the winds are already freshening up here, right? We've got 25, 30, 35, even 45, 50 mile an hour winds near Santiago de Cuba. This is still expected to be a major Category 3 hurricane as it moves over those areas late Tuesday and throughout the day on Wednesday. Again, picking up forward speed, your hurricane watches extend as far north in the Bahamas as Cat Island, including the Exuma area, Rum Key, Long Island, San Salvador, the Acklands, Mayaguana, Inagua, and all of the Turks and Caicos. Already a few 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts at Grand Turk. Now, again, that center line track, we're going to go from a 3 to a 2. So I do not want to underplay the impacts down the road we are likely to see in the southeast Bahamas, near the center and east as far as wind goes, right? Significant wind damage is likely. You guys need to be preparing for also loss of infrastructure, loss of utilities, loss of internet, and things like that. And make sure you guys are stocking up on the non-perishable foods and plenty of drinking water as well. Obviously, I'm going to be monitoring the situation. A lot of live streams coming up between now and when we get the storm moving across that area. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Thank you for all of the support. Thank you, Rhea Eagle Wings. I appreciate your $9.99 super stickers and your $1.99 super thanks. Let's get the hearts out in chat for Rhea Eagle Wings, big friend of the channel, helping to support us here. Now, as I have mentioned, we do have some live elements from Jamaica. We're going to have some people giving us some live coverage of the storm and also, giving us a flavor of what's been happening across the island. So I want to check back in here real quick. Give me just 1 second here. I want to make sure I got the order correctly. So if you guys know, we were watching some videos yesterday from Justin in Treasure Beach on the southwest side of the island. And very recently, he sent us another report. So let's check in with Justin out of Treasure Beach to see what's happening across the island on this Monday. Justin?
Okay, Monday, October 27th, Great Bay Treasure Beach. The time is 8 a.m. It's definitely getting loud outside now. The waves are definitely much bigger, more frequent waves as well. I would say about an extra 2 feet of sand has been brought up the beach and dumped. Let's have a look. Okay. Yeah, the frequency of the waves are definitely picking up here.
Okay, Justin, I appreciate that. And, you know, he's one of the people who's going to likely bring us and hopefully bring us some live coverage as we go through this live stream from the Treasure Beach area there, obviously in a safe manner. And our thoughts are with him and everyone else that lives along the southern coastline of Jamaica. You can just already see how churned up conditions are at this point in time, right? And this storm is still fairly far away. It's beginning that north turn in a very slow fashion, you know, while still jogging off towards the west. If we take a look at exactly how far away it is at this point in time, let me bring on my handy dandy measuring tool here, and we'll take a look at that. So from the southwest side of the island towards the actual eye right now, you know, we're still, it's getting a little bit closer, but it's still about 80 plus miles away, right? So the thicker part of the storm on the northeast side is beginning to spread over the southern side and the southern flank of the island right now. But obviously the core hurricane force winds, which extend about 30 miles from the center, are still well away from the island. So again, slow, agonizing progression right now of this storm. And the reason why it's so agonizing is, I mean, I know it's, you know, anxiety is up right now, you know, and I'm going to do the best that I can to walk you through this, to give you the information, to provide you guys as much knowledge as you have as the storm moves closer to this area. But the rainfall that could fall landfall here in the western side of Jamaica on Tuesday, but to try and accelerate it and to get it out of this area a little bit quicker, you know, that might help suppress the rainfall total some, but the amount of rain that is going to be falling is going to be life-threatening in many spots. Okay, others to check in with on the island as well. My friends, the Cameron family, they are on Old Harbor Bay, and they recently sent me this video again earlier from today, so let's check in with the Cameron family.
So time to leave now, guys. Watch out, the water reach in at the HQ. And we are leave now. We are take the warning.
The white house never real, guys.
You see, we take a video, come, make we go on home, go lock up. Better be safe than sorry. So guys, the water reaching at the HQ already. So we are leave and go to higher ground. We are going at the Airbnb. Watch ya. Watch ya. Tell me, but you what? How what? Me not look, you know. I better left them out there. We are leave now, guys. No joke. The breeze and the rain are coming here now. It's not a good look. So guys, stay tuned. We've come to the end of this wonderful video. Stay tuned and big up on yourself as always.
Okay, thank you very much, Cameron Family. You can check them out there at Cameron Family TV on YouTube. They'll be providing us updates as well. I want to let everyone know that we actually do have the 5 o'clock advisory in from the Hurricane Center. It just came in. So let me read this off to you guys, and then we'll take a look at it together. So we do have the 5 o'clock advisory. The winds are still going to be 175. There has been no fluctuation in intensity right now. Pressure is still going to be 906. So it's steady pressure since the 2 o'clock advisory. And it is now moving northwest at 3. So they think it's a little bit more of a north jog overall at 3 miles an hour. The system will automatically update the cone once the new information comes in. That will likely happen a little bit after 5 o'clock. I'm just going to take a real quick look here at myself here. It potentially might be just a few miles west. I want to be very clear that the Hurricane Center for the 5 o'clock advisory still has a direct landfall in the western side of Jamaica, but they have slowed up the timing a little bit, it looks like. You know, this was the 2 o'clock number earlier. This might be a little bit closer to the coastline. So the slow movement of the storm is actually now more likely at least to bring a daylight landfall to Jamaica. It could be after sunrise tomorrow that we get the landfall. So again, an agonizingly slow storm here, no doubt about it. Let me see if my system has picked up the 5 o'clock advisory, and we can read it together. Again, you know, I like doing this, and I'll update this real quick as
Melissa
well. So let me
taking
just
the piss though, like we don't want to
delete
get
that
on with
part.
life.
And then again, we'll change it here, and I'll get it to the chat too, I promise you. Again, when we start these live streams, there's just certain information I want to make sure I get to you guys, and it's in my head. And then I'm happy to answer any questions. You know, I want to hear from you guys in Jamaica, other areas of the Caribbean and the Bahamas as well. Please let us know what's going on with you guys. You know, how you're doing, how you're preparing. Hopefully you guys are prepped up and ready to go as best as you can in Jamaica. And I keep hitting winds. See, I'm talking and I can't even do it right. Trying to put in the winds twice. Okay. Again, not much of a change just with the wind direction, but the current statistics for Melissa will always live on the top hand side of the screen. So let's get into the discussion. And we do have the 5 o'clock discussion. So I'm going to bring this up together. And again, we can look at this. You know what? Actually, I don't want to start with the discussion. I want to start with the advisory. So this is more of what we call the public advisory, right? The headlines are Category 5 Melissa now moving northwest while warnings are issued for the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos. Catastrophic and life-threatening winds, flooding, and storm surge expected in Jamaica tonight and early on Tuesday. So again, the storm, as of 5 o'clock, located 140 miles to the southwest of Kingston, or about 320 miles from Guantanamo, Cuba. Sustained winds of 175, moving northwest at 3, and that minimal central pressure has plummeted and is now holding steady at 906 millibars. It is a frighteningly powerful storm in that inner core. So we do have, again, the hurricane warning. Actually, the easiest way to look at it is this. Hurricane warning in effect for Cuba.
No, Ladybug, me say, if we don't think Carol, my girl and Melissa take the piss now, because until say she are going like we don't want to get on with life, it's like she just have it on the edge and have it dangling somewhere.
Hurricane conditions are likely within the islands within a 36-hour time frame. So if you live southeast Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, there is the potential for hurricane conditions within 36 hours. Tropical storm warning for Haiti, Las Tunas, the Cuban province of Las Tunas, the Turks, and the Caicos. So Bahamas upgraded to a hurricane warning. We're going to stay with a hurricane watch and tropical storm warning for Turks and Caicos. And see the definition that I just mentioned there. Again, looking at this, a slow turn to the north is expected this evening, followed by a turn to the north and to the east and a slightly faster forward speed on Tuesday. Northwest motion with a faster forward speed is expected on Wednesday and Thursday. And on that forecast track, the core of Melissa is expected to move near or over Jamaica late tonight and Tuesday, and across the southeastern Cuba Tuesday night, and the southeastern sides or the central Bahamas on Wednesday, right? So maximum sustained winds are 175 miles an hour. Some fluctuations in intensity are likely. Melissa is expected to reach Jamaica and southeast Cuba as an extremely powerful major hurricane and will still be a hurricane strength when it crosses the southeastern Bahamas. Again, hurricane force winds extend up to 30 miles from the center and 195 mile an hour from the center of tropical storm force winds. The winds, again, significant. Now, the other thing that they mention about this as well, and it kind of comes into play as the storm moves over the western side of Jamaica, right? They talk about how within the eye, total structural failure is likely, especially in higher elevation, where wind speeds atop and on the windward sides of hills and mountains could be 30% higher, right? So even though maximum sustained winds are 175 right now, and hopefully will fall a little bit, but again, appreciably not much lower, you could add on 30% of that maximum sustained winds in some of the windward facing higher terrain areas of Jamaica, all right? So tropical storm conditions are expected to begin southeast Cuba Tuesday, and then hurricane conditions in the warned area on Tuesday evening. Rainfall totals, again, 15 to 30 inches through portions of Jamaica, and 6 to 12 additional inches in Hispaniola, giving them a storm total of around 40 inches in some areas. 10 to 20 and up to 25 inches of rain for eastern Cuba, 5 to 10 for the Bahamas. So again, it's moving faster at that point in time, 5 to 10 in the Bahamas. Storm surge, again, they're going to stick with the 9 to 13 feet. So 9 to 13 feet above ground level. Significant storm surge along the southeast coast of Cuba as well, maybe 7 to 11 feet there. And then a 4 to 6 foot storm surge for the southeast side of the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos on Wednesday, and the swells. So much information to pass along. And also the fact that there's just so many areas with likely very, very significant impacts, right? So now that I have that information in my head, we can continue to go along with that. First of all, not much has changed, right? And not much is expected to change. Again, when the 5 o'clock track comes in, we're going to see the center line slight shifting to the west, but it's still going to call for a landfall on Jamaica. Still going to monitor, right, the progression, just how much farther west it wants to turn before it tries to go north. Obviously, right, if this wants to try and wiggle a little bit farther to the west, let it. That is still not the overall forecast. I don't want to give our hopes up. We'll hope for the best and plan for the worst. But, you know, even if this does brush the western side of the island again, I just have to continue to reiterate we are on the bad side of the storm here through all of Jamaica then, and only the far eastern side of the island might be spared from the worst part of the storm, just far enough away, you know, mileage-wise, where we may not have the sustained hurricane conditions, even Cat 1 there. If we go, of course, from one side of the island to the other, you're about 140 miles. So you're still going to get strong tropical storm force conditions. Portland, St. Thomas parishes, most of Kingston and St. Andrew parishes, St. Mary, but you might be able to avoid in that scenario the sustained, more impactful hurricane and or major hurricane force winds if it were to brush and make landfall in the Westmoreland, Hanover parish areas, you know, through Savlamar, Lucy, Negril, places like that. Okay. So that's kind of the newest information there. I haven't had a chance yet to jump into the chat, so let's do that. And again, happy to answer whatever questions I possibly can. See, we have another fan funding. I want to thank Jim for your support. Thank you very much. Thank you, Rhea Eagle Wings, another $1.99. Let's get the hearts out for our friends there, and I appreciate that so much. All right, let me get back to the chat. And again, this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. Even today, right, we are likely to not get the brunt of the impacts with Melissa until early on Tuesday, especially now, right? You know, I woke up this morning and I thought, all right, we might get landfall like really early overnight. But the storm is still moving at a creeping 3 miles an hour. In any westward jog, whether that is a more sustained nudge west, or whether that's just a wobble, anything like that just puts a longer duration of time before it bends back to the north to the east. It's not the most direct route. So farther west equals a longer duration south of Jamaica and a more likelihood of a daylight landfall on Tuesday, right? So right now, based on what I'm seeing, and we'll monitor this, and there's the updated track, right? Did you guys see that popped on? Not much of a difference. I mean, probably a couple of miles. So the center line track right now from the Hurricane Center is over the Black River area of St. Elizabeth Parish. So the landfall at this point in time from the 5 o'clock advisory is St. Elizabeth. The far western envelope of cone of uncertainty is a couple of miles offshore. So I'll grant you the brush with the island as a possibility. But again, at this point in time, the highest likelihood by a large stretch is a landfall on Jamaica. And I don't say that lightly, but we need to be prepared for what this storm is likely to bring.
Growing your business shouldn't mean growing your overhead, and it shouldn't be weighed down by busy work and disjointed tools.
Room that is just not picking up the storm properly, and it's going to feed it somewhere that it is extremely unlikely to go. We already looked at the Google DeepMind. All 50 ensemble members have this over the island, with one brushing the western side. But the tight cluster, and this is the newest information, and all of these data points and these spaghetti plots update live in real time in my system. So whatever we're looking at right now, I promise you, is the newest information. Just like I didn't have to touch a thing to get the new track from the Hurricane Center, I don't have to touch a thing for this. And again, unfortunately, you have an extreme tight.
Yes, Ladybug, the latest direction, Black River might be the landfall, and if Black River the landfall, it's Black River and parity.
The impacts are going to be felt island-wide. And in some areas, these are likely to be historic impacts. I hope everyone on the island is taking this storm as seriously as you've ever taken any storm, as seriously as you've ever taken any messaging about a storm moving over the island. All right, chat time. How we doing? I'm going to start back from the beginning. Let me see here. Okay. I want to make this bigger. Can I make this bigger? That didn't work. Oh, yeah. But can I still move it? Yeah, that might actually work. I want to see more chat at one time. I think this works. I'm just adjusting my screen, so I hope you guys will give me that. And let me go to live chat as well. All right. So what do we got going on here, guys? And can I move this to this side? Doesn't look like I can. Well, it's kind of weird. I don't want to use my right hand, so I'm going to have to use my left hand here. All right, here we go. Having rain now in eastern St. Andrew Bull Bay. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate all the information. Hey, Blue Goose, how you doing? Is this starting the surge? If you mean storm surge, we're already starting to see some elevation of the tidal areas. And I actually have got a video coming up from you guys, from Alex, who shows you some of that in the Palisades area of Kingston. Francis says wind and rain picking up now in Spanish Town. And again, our moderators are here to help guide the chat. If I answer a question that they've audibly heard and you ask it, they're going to answer it for you so you can follow them. They're the ones where their names are in blue with the wrench. So anything you guys see from someone with a blue name with a wrench, basically they're speaking for me. They have my full support to answer those questions. We also have our administrator in the chat. You'll see him at Mediamundo. Kind of helping again to answer some questions, but also asking some very pertinent questions, like knowing if you're in a mandatory evacuation zone. I was reading up on some of that before I came on here from one of the local newspapers in Jamaica, the Jamaican Gleaner, and up to 50,000 residents could be relocated. 180 residents evacuated from Rocky Point and Portland Cottage and Clarendon. As Hurricane Melissa begins to approach. So, we're starting to hear about the practical impacts from the storm as far as preparation goes, right? What, the government is asking people to do, and those areas that are likely to be inundated with water or to likely see significant wind damage, and some residents are being evacuated out of those spots. Kingston 8 area, no breeze, only light rain. Thank you very much. Again, I know everyone asks the question of, are you sure this is where it's going? Are you positive or whatever? I'm using data. I'm using all of the model information that I have. We're obviously seeing what the Hurricane Center's thoughts are with this storm. Now, look, it is a storm of Mother Nature. They do have minds of their own. There's a lot of scientific reasoning to impart why this storm is likely to move the direction that it is. Now, again, we've, for the most part, seen this track been very much spot on. Sure, there's going to be some wobbles. And the one reason why that you guys are going to see some wobbles here and there with a storm that is this strong is because it's moving so slowly. And it's rotating around more of an elliptical center rather than this, concentric center. So as I've mentioned many, many times before, you get this more stair-step motion in the short term with the wobbles of an eye of a storm like this. But in a general sense, you get a little bit more of a smooth pattern. Again, if you look at the track plot over the last day or two from Melissa, you're going to see some wobbles back and forth. But if you were to smooth this out in a line in latitude, you're relatively straight, that due west track. And now over the last 12 hours or so, we're beginning that slow northerly turn. You know, we do have to watch, absolutely, about how far west this goes before it turns in. But remember, unfortunately, as it turns north, we expect to do north track for a while, and then trying to turn north and east towards the end of the time frame, maybe not until very late tonight and overnight, which unfortunately, of course, puts more of Jamaica back into play. So we could see this storm, right, you know, by longitude, just a little bit farther west than the tip of the island, but unfortunately kind of come back north and east. That is still a little bit up in the air, but we have to prepare for direct landfall and impacts on the island. You're welcome, Dave. My pleasure. And again, you know, I appreciate everyone asking this question. I hope that explanation gives you a little bit of clarity. And it's a situation we're going to watch together, right? Not clairvoyant. There can be some changes with this track. We're running out of time for this storm to do something completely unexpected. We would love for that to happen. If it somehow decided to pull an errand and just, you know, move across all of our island areas and not have a direct landfall, but we can't hope for that. We have to prepare for the direct impact. And if that happens, we will be very blessed. Cayman Islands are safe. Yes, I expect there to be some squalls and winds picking up from time to time, but based on this track and the weaker western side of the storm, they are unlikely to even get into sustained tropical storm conditions. They will get some gusts from time to time in Little Cayman and Cayman Bracket especially, and even Grand Cayman could see some of that as well. Winfred says, I'm in Upper Clarendon and in the path of the hurricane. Our thoughts are with you. Absolutely. Obviously, there's so many of you in the chat right now who are in the path of this storm. And, you know, again, my job here is to pass along the information as we go along. And I hope that you guys are prepared for the storm. We're going to get through it together. Again, it is going to be a storm with significant impacts. There's no two ways around that. Wherever this storm wants to go, there could be potential historic impacts. When you're talking about a storm right now that has 175-mile-an-hour winds, we don't, you know, can't take that lightly, guys, just how strong this storm is at this point in time. I want to as well, let me drop off this track. I don't think we've looked at the visible satellite imagery yet out of this storm. Just what this storm looks like on this visible imagery. I mean, look how large the storm is. Look how concentric the storm is. The outflow on all sides, right? The storm is almost pulsing in the middle. You know, I've seen other tropical meteorologists describe that, and you can almost see it, right? It's almost kind of doing this. When these storms get to Cat 5 and they're that strong, and there's all that heat energy, right? And there's all that wind, 175 miles an hour rotating around that eye, you kind of do get this eye that does this. And the fact that we continue with this convection, the lightning near the center, is not a good sign, right? Nothing, unfortunately, that I've seen as of right now shows that this storm is weakening at any point, and there is no apparent eye wall replacement cycle occurring. Now, that could begin at a moment's notice, right? In an eye wall replacement cycle, where you get an outer eye to form and collapse on the inner eye, and that basically then brings all of this central dense overcast over the center of the storm, and it raises the pressure and lowers the maximum winds to a degree, not a lot, right? But could that knock it back down to a category 4 before landfall? It's possible. Again, I don't see that occurring right now as we speak, but given the amount of time we still have left before landfall, that is a possibility. But the appreciable differences to a storm moving in with 140 or 170 is not much when we're talking about damage to infrastructure, utilities, the rain that's going to bring in all of that. Unfortunately, that's the case where we've hit that upper end of what the storm is likely to do wherever it wants to go. Okay, so I mentioned Alex, who brought us a lot of great videos yesterday. A little bit earlier today was in the Palisades area of Kingston. So I want to check in with his latest report out of that area. Alex?
Hey, Rusty and guys over at Media Mundo. It's October 27th. It's Monday, and I'm down by Palisades. You can see the weather dome over there. That's the airport. You see that we still have the same storm surge coming in. Not sure if you can hear me with the wind. We've been getting tropical storm gusts so far. A few trees down, light poles here and there. Nothing major yet.
All right, Alex, appreciate that report. We're going to hear again from Alex a little bit later on. Obviously, covering the storm, trying to do that in a very safe fashion for us. Jimmy sent me in this video a little bit earlier. This is from the South Field area in St. Elizabeth Parish, where again the winds are just starting to freshen up and becoming more steady and more consistent. And obviously these squalls will begin to move in throughout the rest of this Monday, and conditions across the island will just continue to go downhill. But you just see that moisture-laden air just sitting off the shoreline, just trying to roll into the island. So again, appreciate Jimmy sending in that video as well. Also keeping an eye out on other areas here. This is going to be from the See Jamaica YouTube channel, and keeping a close eye on that one for you here at this point in time as well. And again, sorry about that. Looks like we might have, might have to, you guys can see it just fine. Okay. There's a little bit of a back end issue here. But anyway, See Jamaica, a YouTube channel. You can always go to See Jamaica on YouTube for updates. Keeping an eye on some of these cameras as well, where again, it's wet at this point in time, some breeze here and there, but as someone mentioned, even in the Kingston area right now, things are fairly quiet. There's a live look to the Maypen area, again, where we've had some rain, and it's good to see there's not many cars on the roadways and there's not many folks walking out and about. Everyone on the island right now should be prepared and ready to go. Let's see here. What did I do? Uh-oh. All right, hang on. Give me just 1 second here, guys. I think we're fine. Yeah, okay. We're good. Sorry. Hit a button on the back end. You never like to hit the wrong button, but I think we're fine. All right. Let me get back to the chat. A great idea as well is to secure those outside furniture and the objects around your home. Anything that is lightweight, anything that is in moderate weight is likely to be picked up with these kinds of winds, right? So anything lightweight that can be brought inside, and they're not flying objects around. We just don't want flying projectiles, because again, flying projectiles can, damage your home as well if they're coming from other areas. A plastic chair that's picked up, even a metal table lifted in winds that could be well over 100 miles an hour in many locations. And again, the maximum potentially in that 160 plus range are going to take light and moderate weight objects and throw them around like beanbags, right? You can almost think of the winds associated with Melissa as a very powerful tornado. That kind of wind field is expected near this storm. Hi, Alexandra from Panama City. Good to see you. Appreciate that. Thank you for the kind words. The real GG for life, again, right now, kind of based on the forward speed being so slow and the fact that it is, at least as we speak, still moving slightly west of north and might continue that trend for a while, would now pull this storm past daybreak tomorrow morning for landfall, right? So again, any little bit of a shift west is, appreciated, right? But also going to slow down the timing of the storm if ultimately it comes back north into the east, And if you guys have been watching the live stream since this morning, we get these shifts. I know, and a lot of people are trying to be, hey, look, it's going west, it's going west. And it is, for the short term, tumbling west. But what we have to do is, over a much longer time sample than just an hour or two, we have to see if that's just a wobble or a trend. So many times when I've been doing hurricane coverage here on Media Mundo or my quarter century on television in the United States, we would get to this point with a major hurricane, trying to make landfall, trying to forecast exactly where it was going to go. And a lot of people be like, you see that wobble, you see that turn, it's turning. And it's, you got to give it some time to see, because again, these are not smooth storms. They're not going to go in straight lines. But of note, it is slightly west of that center line as of now. Let's see how this plays out over the next couple of hours. Again, Hurricane Center is still calling for a very high likelihood of a direct landfall in the western side of Jamaica. And regardless of whether this storm makes that landfall on the western side or just skirts the western side of the island, again, being on the east side of this storm, you're on the worst part of that storm with the most significant wind field that expands farthest away from the center, your onshore winds, and the highest amount of rain on this northeast quadrant. The right front side of the storm is the worst part of the storm. Everyone getting tired of the storm, I hear you. Hey, Tanya, in Spalding, Manchester, are starting to experience some wind. Appreciate that. Rain in Spanish Town. Good night. Apologize, I've got this touch screen, and every so often. Rusty here on the homeland, start officially direct. Cat fire. I got you. Yeah, Panama, a little bit of, there's going to be a lot of swell action, right? And some squalls moving in, in other areas too. I mean, again, this is an expansive storm. You can clearly see that. Some of this is generating some thunderstorm activity over the Bay Islands of Honduras. The heavy rain continues for the western side of Haiti, Hispaniola in general, even into Santo Domingo, the Dominican Republic, still along the DR coastline, some significant heavy rain. Again, we have a lot of friends of the channel who live in the Dominican Republic. If you guys do, and you've gotten your internet back, let me know. But it has been very quiet, very crickets from a lot of our friends in and on Hispaniola. So, it leads me to believe that the power issues and the internet issues in a lot of areas are still very significant. And again, in Haiti itself, we have had expansive flooding. What is the current speed over land? As far as winds right now, they're freshening to be pretty consistent in the 40+ mile an hour range over the southern side of the island, Noble Pills. And again, that's becoming steadier, and tropical storm force conditions are likely to just continue to overspread the island and will overspread the island the remainder of the day. So far, no rain in the grill. That's good, right? We need to keep the rain away as long as we possibly can, knowing what's coming. I would expect Spanish Town to be significantly impacted. Yes, look, the entire island is likely to see very significant impacts. Closer to the center, the most significant impacts could be the wind, right? When you're talking about a storm that has 175 mile an hour winds, but the storm surge along all of the southern coastline, and then the rainfall and even high-end tropical storm to low-end hurricane force winds, even in the eastern side of the island, will bring some significant impacts there as well. Rural Hill in East Portland, Jamaica, little rain and a breeze. Thank you very much for that report. Starting to get some tropical storm winds right now and some light rain in Santa Cruz. I appreciate that. Petro Green asks, is the storm coming or what? Again, very slow movement, but yes, that is the forecast, that the storm will be approaching Jamaica, and it's begun the north turn, right? There is still certainly a west component to its movement, but from here on out, it is going to get closer and closer to the island. It just might be agonizingly slow as it tries to do so. Rain with a light breeze in Sav Lamar. Art and Turks and Caicos, patiently waiting in preparations. Smart move, Art. Again, down the road, we'll be discussing your area in length and detail. Will Ocho Rios get hit? Every part of the island is going to get hit, right? Now, again, let's talk about if we want to say, okay, where's the worst part? Who's going to be impacted the most? At this point in time, the hurricane force winds extend out about 30 miles. So if this ended up being the actual location, you're going to get the sustained hurricane force winds well into Mandeville. And I got to tell you something, with a storm this size, to reach a few more miles east as it expands its wind field a little bit for landfall, where Maypen and Hayes are associated with that, it's absolutely plausible. Then that 30-mile range gets you through Savlamar and begins to brush places like Negril. And that could be, again, a little bit conservative. The tropical storm force winds extend 195 miles, and you're going to see the higher end sustained tropical storm force winds, within that first 100 miles or so, in that black and white areas. That continues to kind of spread out and build and fluctuate from time to time. So high end, again, your tropical storm force winds up to 73 miles an hour, very damaging winds sustained, but gusts are likely to be much higher than that, right? And then a little bit down the road from this plot point here, again, if we go to Lucy, more within the hurricane conditions, Montego Bay would see it, obviously Cambridge, deeper into the northern sides of Manchester and maybe Clarendon, eking into northwest sides of St. Catharines, St. Anne, most of St. Anne and Trelawney, all of Trelawney would see hurricane force conditions. Ocho Rios on over towards places like Port Maria, St. Anne's Bay, close, very, very close. What I'm concerned about is with the landfall, sometimes these hurricanes, their wind fields expand a little bit as they encounter the friction of land, right? We can see that inner core winds expand a bit. And although the maximum winds come down a touch when that happens, the unfortunate circumstance of that is that the hurricane force winds extend outward in a larger area. And when we're talking about these kinds of winds, they're all going to be destructive. So it's not a good thing if that were to happen. Again, we don't want to focus so much on the highest wind speed. It's how large the wind field is and how impactful that is likely to be through a large area of the island. Again, at this point in time, I would put Portland and St. Thomas parishes, Port Antonio, Morant Bay, Yawlis area, Morant Point, at the areas where it's the least likely to see sustained hurricane force winds over 74 miles an hour, but gusts over that are still likely. Yep, 175 is sustained. Well, any shift west might have some impacts down the road as to what part of the Bahamas gets hit the most, but it's a little bit too far down the road to see, right? Because this is a very short term, look in how that ridge and the weakness in it will influence the ultimate path. Still be determined. Again, that's why we have our cone of uncertainty, right? Which where the ultimate path of the storm could be. Right now from the Hurricane Center, that's as far north as San Salvador, Runquillo, and the Exuma areas, passing right over those islands, the Long Island included in that, closer to the Acklands and Mayaguana, and the far eastern side of that envelope is Mayaguana, and just outside of that, you're going to have places like Anagua and Turks and Caicos. But, potentially, but we're a little bit too far away to see if a west shift continues with a farther north track overall. Jimmy saying hopefully it weakens. I hope it does as well, but again, I'm not expecting it to weaken to practically change the impacts to the island. I think that's the biggest thing, right? To practically change the impacts. You live in Southeast Cuba, you need to get ready. Absolutely. Ms. Petit says the temperature has changed in Mobay, getting really chilly. Lucy in Hanover, appreciate that. Just checking with our friends on the island here, guys. So from every so often, I see me look at the phone. It's coordinating some of that activity. Hey, Garrett, how are you? Hope you're doing well. Andrea asked 175, is that a history-making storm? I believe there has been a couple that have been slightly stronger, but not much. And, there's a difference between how strong a storm gets in the open waters and how strong a storm has been at landfall. And obviously, sometimes these storms peak prior to landfall, and hopefully that's the case with Melissa as well. But this is about as dangerous of a storm as I've ever discussed in my entire career. The impacts are about as high end as I've ever had to discuss for one location, considering that we're looking at 3 different impacts that could all be life-threatening, right? The wind impact, substantial, right? I don't know if anyone has been in a storm where the winds have even been near 100 miles an hour, right? You know what that kind of storm can bring. The fact that we could be, 1.5 times that or more, 150 plus at landfall is somewhat unfathomable, really, just to think about what that wind could do in that inner core as it moves on shore, or even if it brushes the island again. Now, the storm surge impacts 9 to 13 feet, right? Think of an average size human being, little under 6 feet. So put 2 people on top of each other, and that is the likely wall of water that is going to be coming into the shoreline along and east of the center, which again, the farther west the storm goes, that opens up more of the south coast for the onshore southerly winds to the southeast. So you have that kind of wind storm surge pushing up, and that doesn't even account for the breakers. It doesn't account for the swells and the overall wind action, which could be even more significant than that, right? Adding on top of the 9 to 13 feet, and then the 10, 20, even 30 inches of rain. Again, that amount of rain in a short amount of time, catastrophic flooding. To note, guys, I live in Central Florida. We had some 12 and 15 inch rainfall totals ourselves yesterday. It has washed out roads, okay? Good asphalt roads washed out. So any infrastructure on Jamaica that isn't as, hardened, if you will, the hardened infrastructure, roadways or buildings with that kind of wind and that kind of rain, there is likely to be a lot of devastation with the infrastructure. So again, if you live on the island, hopefully you've got your batteries powered up, ready to go. The one question I do have for you guys, because I was talking to some of our live streamers here earlier, some of them have already lost power. So let me ask you that. If you live on Jamaica, have you lost power already? So let's put that question out there. Let me know. I am MIF admin. What's the possible storm surge in Anado Bay? Can you let me know what parish that is, please? That is one area that I'm not strictly familiar with right away. We take care of ourselves, we take care of our family, our property, our animals. Hey, Charles, how are you? Southeast Bahamas under order of evacuation. Okay. I will dig into that. Thank you for that. Yeah, again, first of all, I expect the forward speed to come up for anyone asking, like, okay, when is it exactly going to hit the island? But a farther west track, means not a direct path towards the island. That's one thing. Secondly, we have to see how quickly this thing wants to start to pick up some forward speed, right? Does that happen not until tonight? Then that puts it even a little bit deeper into Tuesday. At this point in time, based on everything that I'm seeing and what the Hurricane Center has discussed, we're not likely to get landfall until at least daybreak tomorrow morning. So the timing is coming pushed back a little bit with the slower speed. So I'm not expecting a 1 a.m., 2 a.m. local time landfall right now. It's still going to monitor the situation, but we're, still 80 plus miles away. We're still not directly towards the island. Hopefully that continues, right? Again, I don't want to give, we always want hope, but we have to look at the facts of the situation as well, where pretty much all the model data and the Hurricane Center track still has a direct landfall. But any farther west jog, let me put it that way, backs up the timing of the landfall in the most significant part of the storm over the island. Lulu, so we just got a 5 o'clock full update from the Hurricane Center. So all the information that you guys see on this screen is as of the 5 o'clock advisory. That was a full advisory from them. Again, if we look at the discussion with that, I never pulled up the discussion. Again, there's a lot of technical jargon with this discussion, right? But to show you this, they do expect it over the next 12 hours. So by 5 a.m. to still be a Cat 5, slightly down to 165. And then obviously at 5 o'clock tomorrow, they have this inland. So it gives you an idea that they've backed up the timing as well, right? So likely a daylight landfall, if that were to occur, and that is still the most likely scenario, and then tracking across the island during the day, and then exiting the coastline probably late afternoon or early evening tomorrow. Picking up some forward speed as it does. Excuse me, and then again, the 110-ish here, and then that 100 to 90 mile an hour potential over the southeast Bahamas. So the reason why it's trying to turn to the north is that there is a ridge to the north of it that is beginning to weaken, right? Let me show you guys real quick, and then I'll move on to some other graphics I have. Let me bring out my telestrator. You guys know I love this thing. All right, so for a long time now, I guess I have to hit start too, huh? All right, hang on. All right. So for a long time now, we've had an area of high pressure west of the storm, counterclockwise. We've had an area of high pressure east of the storm, clockwise winds. So why has Melissa not moved much over the last several days? Remember, it's just been drifting west more than anything. Well, on the east side of this high, winds are out of the north. On the west side of this high, winds are out of the south. In between, you have Melissa, and you have very weak steering currents. These are negating each other, right? The north wind here, the south wind here negates it. And so you just have this kind of steady, subtly, slow movement to the storm. The easterly trades aren't as strong here. But eventually, if you guys see this right here, this is a trough coming in, okay, from the United States. And I believe if I bring up the fronts on this map, you'll even see that, right? So this is my system picking up on this trough here, right? Now, as this trough begins to move in, it will erode away the eastern side of this high. And as the trough comes in, the winds ahead of it are out of the southwest. I know this is sloppy. I'm not John Madden. Let me clear this real quickly here. But again, as this erodes away and this trough comes in, the winds start to pick up out of the southwest, and that should drive the storm. And as it gets under more influence, as it gets closer to it, it picks it up even more, and it goes faster and faster and faster. That's the science behind why it's expected to do so. But there's been clear science as to exactly why it hasn't moved much in the short term and why it is forecast to finally do so beginning today. Again, the track has been pretty spot on the last few days, right? The slow progression west, the turn to the north beginning today. We've certainly seen a turn north. Now, it's still driving slightly west of north, but you can see that that turn north has certainly occurred. It is getting closer to the island. I think the only question we have right now is does it come right over the western third of the island, or is there a brush scenario with the western edge? Outside of that, there's not a lot of agreement, if you will, with any of the models trying to show something much different than that. Again, if I bring on the spaghetti plots, which are always updating in real time, just take off the satellite data so you guys can see a little bit more clearly. You have a huge cluster of those still over the same area, St. Elizabeth Parish, right? A couple over, a little bit east. You got your few stragglers west. You're never going to have 100% agreement. And we've seen that from time to time. If you guys notice, and again, I mentioned this yesterday's video, I'm not even showing the GFS. It's just been so out to lunch with the entire storm. So we can start to, use our brains a little bit and dismiss some of the solutions that are being presented. All right. This is our radar out of Jamaica. Clear eye still being seen in that. Again, look at all of the heavy rain on the northeast side, right? Just really significant, big wall of water, yellows, oranges, higher reflectivity, more consistent, heavier rainfall beginning to approach and spread into the island. And that will just slowly occur, but consistently occur deeper and deeper into this Monday. Just farther in time that we go throughout the rest of this late afternoon into the evening, all that heavier rain will just continue to spread into the area. Again, and I need to update this, right? We have a hurricane warning now for southern and central Bahamas and Turks and Caicos. So I will update that. The other one that I wanted to show you real quick is the Google DeepMind, right? The Google DeepMind model, and I'll continue to update this as well. Again, latest that I was able to pull before I came on is an ensemble product, just like the European and the GFS. There's 50 members running of this, 50 iterations of the model. 49 of them have a direct landfall. The farthest west one is a couple of miles west of Negril. But still, even if you brush the coastline, the inner core winds will still be over Western, Westmoreland, and Hanover parishes, even in that scenario, right? So this model has done very good during this hurricane season. It's been fairly reliable. And again, it's still showing a direct landfall. Now, could this shift a little bit farther west? With the time frame that we still have with landfall not likely for another 18 hours or so, certainly a possibility, right? Let's say 14 to 18 hours, something like that. So I'll monitor those trends as well. This is my timing for when I do expect that. Again, this afternoon, we're going to keep the sustained hurricane force winds offshore at the earliest point late tonight, a little bit before midnight, potentially starting to see, again, if we get a little bit more of an acceleration of the storm later today, that before midnight, it's not out of the question. It's plausible that we get some hurricane force sustained winds. That's winds of over 74 miles an hour or greater to move into the island before midnight, but especially going downhill overnight as we get into our Tuesday morning. And then just throughout the day on Tuesday, the hurricane conditions overspreading the central and the western side of the islands with some hurricane gusts on the far east side of the island and tropical storm sustained winds certainly across the entire island at that point in time. So again, all of the threats that we have mentioned still are all into play, still in that catastrophic, devastating, life-threatening scenario. Anything you want to use, verbiage-wise, to understand and make sure that this information is, processed, if you will, to what we're likely to see on the island. Again, always heed local government and local officials. The most important thing that I'm doing here on this live stream is to try to spread the messaging, right? So if you know anyone who you think is going to get anything out of this, please share this with them, even if it's just a quick screen grab, or just let them know that I'm live. And if they want to tune in, that would be great. But it's more about spreading the information than anything. Of course, we'll continue to monitor the situation as far as, where am I here? Oh, here we go. the situation across the island. Again, we're going to check in from time to time with the Sea Camera crew there on YouTube. This is a live shot to Maypen. And again, at this point in time, you know, a little bit of a lull in the action from time to time here. But again, live look to Maypen. And you can always check out more live cameras on the Sea Jamaica YouTube channel. Again, we'll see. This is their multi-camera view, so we'll see. But at this point in time, look, we've had some squalls move through Maypen. Not too bad there. Here's West Parade. Again, same situation. What I do like to see is there's very little activity on the roadways right now, right? I know that tolls have been suspended in some areas. You know, I don't know if you guys know these areas, you know, that the police are blocking off these roads, you know, or curfew is in place. Let me know in the comments section below. But it's good to see that the streets are already quiet right now on this late Monday afternoon. Again, that's Sea Jamaica on YouTube if you want to check them out. All right, so again, we're going to continue to monitor how this storm is going to track in the short term and how quickly north it wants to turn and how quickly west it might want to jog as well. Back over to the graphics here. So again, you know, I looked at this morning. I thought that this was probably about what we would see. Haven't changed this. Where again, wherever the center wants to move inland and east of there, if the storm, which is forecast right now to make landfall as a Cat 5, probably in the 160 to 165 range, which is, it's outrageously strong. I mean, the fact that we're talking about a storm weakening to hit those numbers wherever it goes is one of the highest end storms I've ever talked about in my career. And this is devastation, my friends. Well, we got 130 to 160 mile an hour winds. And then on the southern coastline, you've got a storm surge of 9 to 13 feet, right? 120 to 140 mile an hour winds in other areas as well. All right, sorry, just checking in with our team here. Okay. Rain 15 to 30 inches, locally up to 40. Now, I expect the majority of the eastern side, the eastern parishes from St. Catherine to Kingston, St. Andrew, St. Thomas, Portland, St. Mary, probably even most of St. Anne as well, to fall somewhere within that 15 to 30 inch range, right? It's significant rain. Potentially a couple of spots could go even higher than that. But when you're talking about 375 to 750 millimeters of rain for a storm total, that's just so much water on the island in such a short amount of time. So significant flash flooding, life-threatening flooding is likely to occur with the storm as it begins to move inland. And again, a storm surge of 9 to 13 feet. So a wall of water 9 to 13 feet high, not even talking about the waves or the storm surge on top of that, you know, as far as the swells and the breakers pushing on with that wall of water. Western side of the island, and again, depending on the track, I might have to up these numbers for St. Elizabeth and Westmoreland parishes. We'll see how that track ultimately plays out. But on the west side of the storm, we're still expecting winds close to the core to be 120 to 140 miles an hour, 90 to 120 in the northwest side of the island. And again, those numbers might have to be raised. So ultimately, I might raise the western side of the island's winds a little bit. I might lower the far eastern side of the island's winds a touch. All of these winds are destructive to a lot of buildings, to a lot of infrastructure. Again, island-wide, those kind of impacts are likely. 10 to 20 inch rainfall totals, locally 25, and that storm surge on the west side of the island of about 6 to 9 feet. Rainfall totals, again, maximum likely to be 25 inches or higher. It's good, if you will, to see the European model has come down a little bit at a maximum of 25, but still, a couple of spots here or there could brush the 30-inch total, 750 millimeters. That kind of rain, certainly flash flooding of all sorts in the southeast sides of Cuba is likely as well. 10, 20, 25 inches of rain near Santiago de Cuba in the Guantanamo area, and then 4 to 8, maybe 5 to 10 inches of rain, central, southeast Bahamas, maybe not as far south as Turks and Caicos, but it'll be close. That could lead to some flooding concerns there as well, although with the, again, increased forward speed of Melissa by then, we're not likely to have the feet of rain in the Bahamas like we are likely to see in Jamaica, southeast Cuba, and what we are already seeing in Haiti. Again, the flooding coming out of Haiti right now is so significant. And again, your storm surge, as I've mentioned several times, should be clear at this point. Hurricanes are areas of low pressure. That means winds wrap counterclockwise around the storm. So if the center is here, all of the winds on the east side will be out of the south, which is going to push all of that wall of water right on shore. That's the problem with having a storm farther west, is more of the southern coastline now gets into the highest storm surge possibility, which again, in some areas is likely to be 9 to 13 feet and locally even higher. Hi, from Guantanamo City. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're prepared. Appreciate you tuning in from Cuba. It's my understanding that the airport has been closed for quite some time. Yeah, no flights in or out for sure by now, but that it's been closed for a while there. Key cities is just a little rain in Kingston. No curfew. Okay. And Otto Bay is in St. Mary. All right. So again, you know, for looking at the northeast side, let me double check. St. Mary Parish, right? Okay. So kind of in this area, right? I'm going to assume you're a little bit east of Port Maria, somewhere in this area, right? Orientation of the shoreline will matter. But here's what's going to happen with that area. Let me bring up my telestration. Boy, this is always going to be fun. All right. So we have to assume that the storm is going to go here now. Again, subject to change. We know that, right? So initially, to begin with, all of the winds on the east side of the island are going to be like this, okay? Which means for that area, there could be a little bit of paralleling, or depending on the orientation of the shoreline, pushing some of that in. As the storm progresses offshore, right? Now all of these winds are here, and the winds actually start to turn out of the southwest and eventually out of the south, and it pulls all the water back out, right? So the water will begin to recede in these areas as the storm pulls away. Ultimately, a pretty good average is that we would see about half of the storm surge to what the southern coastline would see out of the storm, but it is a little bit harder to forecast. Again, there's no high resolution tools as far as the storm surge products available in the United States, unfortunately. But with that orientation of the shoreline that kind of juts up like this, I am a little bit concerned here, right in the Port Maria area, that it catches a little bit more water here with the easterly wind. And then that just inundates areas with a little bit higher storm surge there. Whereas if the winds are more parallel with the shoreline, right, a lot of the highest wave action and storm surge might likely just skirt the coastline. But still significant storm surge is possible in the northern coast. They're just not going to have the wall of water that the south coastline has. So I would say at least several feet. Little downpour in Kingston. Yep, always a good idea to know where the nearest shelter are. We talked about in yesterday's video that a lot of the schools were being used as shelters. Again, I've been kind of keeping up with some of the local press on the island as well. See if there's some Sometimes they do like little headlines here. Port Royal is urged to evacuate. And we talked about Port Royal in yesterday's live stream as well, where again, I thought that there wasn't, that Port Royal area was likely to be flooded, right? The airport as well. I mean, just that wall of water coming in. And again, this just offshore buoy there, picking up those sustained winds of around 40 to 45 at this point in time. So again, back over to, what's been happening with the center here, right? Certainly a little bit of a turn west over the last hour or two. It's still gaining latitude, so it's still going to the north. And again, we have to watch this over, a long duration time as to whether this is just a bit of a wobble or whether it really wants to continue to track a little bit more to the west. That would, of course, be good news for some areas of the island, but western sides of the island still likely to feel the full brunt of the storm, even if, and I think right now this is best case scenario, the eye skirts the island on the western side. Got my Lean Law tumbler, got my diet green tea. Raining off and on here in Clarendon, I appreciate that. Little breeze in Savlamar as well. So the next update from the Hurricane Center will come our way at 8 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time or 7 o'clock local time in Jamaica. Dean says winds and rain picking up now in Mandeville. Yep, so Hurricane Hunter reconnaissance aircraft, there are all different forms of them, and the Navy is involved in this as well. They'll be interrogating this storm almost consistently, right? And again, as you guys know, I have access to the live aircraft reconnaissance data if they want to transmit and if I can pick it up. The latest that we're seeing is way out here. And let's see if we get a time fix on that. And that is current. So there is a reconnaissance aircraft on the far, far southeast flank of this storm. I mean, far away, but it is beginning to move in. So remind me, and from time to time, I'll check in on that data and we'll see what the newest information is. Again, the fact that we continue to have lightning being observed near the center is not a good sign, for any weakening of the storm. Let's look at our visible satellite imagery here before we lose that. I mean, look at this monster. Again, visible satellite imagery has to have daylight, so it starts to fade, but you get these shadows right at the end of the day that really show you where that deeper convection and those higher cloud tops are. Just take the lightning off so you can see that. Can you see the depth of that eye, my friends? With these cloud tops at about minus 80 to minus 85 degrees Celsius, that's how high up in the atmosphere they are. But that eye is something. The depth of it is quite amazing. Concentric, about 10 nautical miles wide. Very classic storm, unfortunately. Again, coordinating with our live streamers on the island, so I apologize if from time to time I'm going to stop and focus on them and give them direction and information. I mean, obviously, the most important thing, and they're just doing this because they want to help tell the story on Jamaica, is to stay safe. We're not asking them to do anything in particular. If they just feel like they can safely go out and shoot some video for us or go live, they're going to do so. But it's important to help tell the story on Jamaica, both before the storm, as much as we possibly can during the storm, and of course after the storm as well. Yeah, there's multiple planes that'll be in and out. Again, my system will pick up the one that's transmitting, and we can follow that in real time. But it's not a complete look at all of the, hurricane reconnaissance aircraft and where all of them are at this point in time. I would say I can pull in the recon data, and we can look at that on a graphic as well. What would you like to know about Montego Bay? I mean, again, Montego Bay, northwest side of the island. Obviously, the center track is likely to come very close to that area. So even on the northwest side, based on the track from the hurricane center right now, Montego Bay would experience the inner core winds. Right now, they might be weakening a touch as they get to the northern side of the island, but more than likely, and I showed you the graphic earlier for the northwest side of the island, more than likely at least 90 to 120 mile an hour winds sustained in Montego Bay with higher gusts. But if the track of the storm even nudges a little bit farther to the west, the core of the storm has an even higher possibility of going directly over Montego Bay, where those wind, that range of wind would be too low. And I'd have to up that as well. So significant hurricane conditions are likely in Montego Bay starting early tomorrow, potentially as early as the daybreak hour, and then spreading closer to Montego Bay and being more consistent in that area as we go through the remainder of Tuesday. Again, if you live on Jamaica and you're watching right now, all of the island has significant impacts likely to move into your area here as we get into the daybreak hours of Tuesday, and then spreading across the island the remainder of the day, with tropical storm conditions moving in the deeper into this Monday that we go. Storm surge wise, again, just like, that was asked to me of St. Mary Parish, because Montego Bay is on the north side of the island. It's going to be interesting too, because if the storm tracks east of you with the eye, you're going to have the north winds to begin with, which would really limit the potential storm surge eventually. And then as the storm pulls away, you would actually get a little bit of a southwest wind. So behind the storm, you could get a little bit of water piling up, especially again in the Montego Bay area, because if there is a southwest wind, it's going to skirt the kind of Lucy area, and then based on the orientation of the shoreline here, maybe have a couple of areas where we could see some feet of rain. Now that's, or excuse me, some feet of storm surge, and not even accounting the rainfall that's out there. Obviously, if we're going to get some swells moving in as well, we're just not expecting the most significant storm surge on the north side of the island. But feet of storm surge for places like Negril and Montego Bay are absolutely still in the forecast based on the intensity of this storm. Brownstown and St. Anne, tropical storm force winds have moved in. Okay, thank you very much for that. Linstead again here, central side of the island. Again, based on this track, we would likely get right on the edge of hurricane force winds sustained over 74 miles an hour or greater, but gusts that could be much higher than that, well over 100 miles an hour. So significant wind impacts would still be felt even as far east as Linstead. And I would put Kingston in this as well. Spanish Town, Portmore, Halfway Tree, Old Harbor, Hayes, Maypen, anywhere within this cluster. Even if you're just slightly more than 30 miles away from that center, we're still likely to get some sustained hurricane force winds, certainly gusts that will be over 100 miles an hour from time to time. Again, very destructive winds, rainfall, higher elevations that could produce significant amounts of ice, of flooding, especially into the low-lying areas, catastrophic flooding, guys. Feet of rain likely in these areas, 12, 15, 20 inches of rain, maybe locally up to 25 and 30, 500 millimeters of rain, 675 millimeters of rain as a storm total in some of these areas. If the storm were to track slightly farther west, potentially area, but at this point in time, we're close enough to where that core is going to be, where we are likely to see at least some borderline hurricane force sustained winds of over 74 miles an hour, and certainly gusts that would likely still go above 100. second here, guys. As I said, we're working with our friends behind the scenes. Okay. Savlamar, again, you know, unfortunately, the southwest side of the island at this point in time would be the part of the island that would experience the most direct impacts from the storm. You know, with the track trying to come back into the southwest side of the island, so Westmoreland and St. Elizabeth parishes, you know, would likely get the brunt. Obviously, Savlamar being near the coast, on the coast, would likely also get a lot of storm surge as well. There will be a difference in some ways as to the strength of the winds with the storm, right? If it's right over Savlamar, east of Savlamar, or off towards the west. Again, a east track from Savlamar is slightly better because you're on the weaker side, but with these kinds of winds, as I've mentioned many times, and I will continue to do so to make sure that the messaging is out there, guys, with these kinds of winds, they're destructive throughout the entire hurricane force environment, right? You know, 30 miles west, 30 miles east, all of those winds are going to be destructive. Sure, the inner core winds near the center of circulation within that 10-mile radius will be the strongest, but the impacts from a Category 5 hurricane, wind-wise, will be felt far and wide. With the storm surge, again, if the storm tracks east of you, you're likely to get a 6 to 9 foot storm surge in Savlamar. If it tracks west, if it wants to try and brush the coast of the island towards the Grill or any areas there, Savlamar area would have more of a south wind and more direct storm surge impacts. In the short term, there's absolutely been a little bit of jog west, right? But again, you know, these storms, they bobble, right? And I've been watching this all day, if you guys have as well. We've had bobbles and turns and twists because the storm is moving so slowly. Erratic movement in the short term is expected, right? We don't expect this storm to go in a straight line when it has 175 mile an hour winds and it's moving at 3 miles an hour. It would be great if the track west continues, but that's not what is forecast right now, okay? Now again, farther west track, even in the short term, will do a couple of things. Sure, you know, the Hurricane Center may look at this and the newer model information that's coming in, and I'll keep an eye on it, and maybe they do see enough of an appreciable shift where they want to take this line and move it a little bit farther west. But the question is, given the fact that we're 14 to 18 hours away from landfall, you know, how much farther west do they expect it to go, with still the vast majority of the model data showing a direct landfall to the island? Okay, that's number one. Number two is, you know, again, the appreciable differences that it's going to make on the island, which could not be very significant, and in some areas even more impactful if the storm stays just slightly off towards the west. Remember, the right front quadrant, or the northeast side of a storm like this, is the most dangerous part of the hurricane. And unfortunately, that is the quadrant of the storm that will sit over the island for the longest duration. Hi, Fiona. Thank you so much for your $1.99 super thanks. Big friend of the channel, moderator, is always here helping things out. Let's get the hearts out for Fiona, for Rhea Eagle Wings, who also went nuts with the super stickers and the super thanks, and Jim as well. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate all the support of the channel. If you guys want to do me a favor and hit that like button for me. That also helps as well. The biggest thing I would ask you to do, though, is to share this information with anyone who thinks going to get anything out of it, right? Let them know about what we've been discussing, whether that's just letting them know or giving them a link to the channel and saying, hey, if you want to join in, this is what I'm watching right now as far as coverage of the storm. So I appreciate you guys for doing so. So, and I keep getting the same questions, and I absolutely understand why. And I'm going to do my best to continue to answer those. And again, our chat moderators can jump in. Timing wise for the storm, any jog west, right? Even if it's just a short-term jog west, is likely to back up the timing of landfall, because now it's farther west and doesn't have a direct route rather than going due north, right? So that's the shorter time frame to get to the island. A west and then turn to the east, east and northeast is a little bit longer duration. So my feeling based on what I'm seeing right now is we're likely to not have landfall until we get into the early morning hours of tomorrow morning. More than likely, landfall won't occur until daybreak tomorrow morning. Again, if it does, still the highest probability. But, grant you that there is a plausible scenario where this brushes the west side of the island, right? Which again, that's better for the east side of the island, but the west side of the island would still see about the same impacts. Again, the storm's massive, guys. We'll take a look at the size coming up. I want you to understand how large and how wide the destruction is going to be with a storm of this magnitude. It's probably hard to fathom, right? Just because you're 50 and 75 miles from landfall, you are likely to see destructive impacts from this storm. But this is the arrival time for the hurricane force winds. At the very earliest, it's late tonight and more than likely during the overnight hours. Again, hurricane conditions will move in before the actual eye approaches. We are forecasting, the Hurricane Center has discussed this, an increase in forward speed to some degree starting later tonight and especially overnight. So this timing is based on the fact that it's creeping at 3 miles an hour right now, but it is likely to pick up a little bit of forward speed in the short term and especially overnight. Then traversing the island throughout the day on Tuesday and more than likely exiting the island, on the northern side sometime late Tuesday. Again, give or take a few hours here. Part of that is just based on how far west that it wants to track before it, ultimately is forecast to come back to the north. I appreciate that, Stacy. Thank you very much. Listen, I understand everyone being nervous, okay? I grew up on the west coast of Florida. Guys, I've been through storms. Now, I will grant you, I have not been through a Category 5, but when I was a teenager, I went through a storm, and it wasn't even a hurricane. It was the no-name storm of 1993 that flooded out our house with salt water, completely flooded the house, not feet of water, but enough, and it was salt water where we had to leave the home for 6 months. So I know what it feels like to have that helpless feeling, right? And to, and to be displaced, and, my heart breaks for my friends on Jamaica. My heart breaks for what's going to more than likely happen in Southeast Cuba. We'll have to really monitor the situation in the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos. The flooding ongoing right now in Haiti is destructive, and it's life altering, right? The best that we can do is understand what's happening and be as prepared as we possibly can. It's the best we can do, right? To try and shelter as much as we can and to hope the impacts are as little as possible. We hope for that, but we also prepare for the worst. And this storm is of the worst magnitude when we have winds of 175 miles an hour, a storm that has a pressure as low as 906 millibars and a northwest wind at around 3. Have you guys felt that, by the way? Have you guys felt the weight of that air in Jamaica yet? Where that pressure begins to lower? Let me know. Roger says starting to get some tropical storm strength winds here, Brownstown and St. Anne. So there you go. Fort Myers is in the house. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is in the house. Appreciate you guys. South Florida. Oh, well, Andrew is kind of the benchmark for Florida, right? You know, we've had some since, you know, Irma, Helene, Milton of most recent. But, you know, Andrew was that first big one, you know, that a lot of folks, you know, remember. And obviously back in time, there were strong ones as well. You know, Jamaica has had their own history of significant hurricanes as well. All the numbers that you see, by the way, if you're unclear, are wind gusts in miles an hour. So just continuing to monitor that. The latest statistics from Melissa on the top of your screen. Again, this storm has gotten nothing but stronger and stronger and stronger, right? Now, certainly, again, in the short term, there has absolutely been a jog west. No doubt about it. So if we look at, and this is a 6-hour loop, right? So at noon today, Eastern time, so 11:14 a.m. on the island, we were tracking certainly in a west-northwest fashion. Then we got here, and again, it hasn't been long. You know, you might think it's been long, but just in the last 2 hours, there's been a little bit of a turn west, okay? Now, if I show you guys the track over the last several days, really since the beginning of the storm, right? But if we were to look here and draw a straight line to where the center is now, latitude-wise, it's about the same. But look at the plot points and what it took to get there, right? These storms, when they get strong and they're moving very slowly, they're big time wobblers, okay? So the thing that I will always point out in this scenario, when you're looking and hoping that a storm is moving in a direction that is not closer to you, is that we have to look at that in a longer term trend. A couple of hours of a storm moving, you know, 75, 90 degrees on the compass west or in a different direction than what the forecast is, doesn't ultimately mean that that's where it's going to keep going. Has to be over a much longer duration. But I'll continue to monitor the trends of the models as well. As a matter of fact here, real quickly, just behind the scenes, I'm going to bring up the latest Google DeepMind and see if we got a new update there. We do have the 12, okay. Perfect. Now I can show you guys this. It'll take a second. So I'll show you guys this as soon as I can get it on the air. But the Google DeepMind, just so you know, the latest forecast has all 50 members with a direct landfall to Jamaica, okay? It shows this west jog and then a turn north and a turn northeast, very similar to the Hurricane Center. So again, it's the newest one, you know, obviously it's a little old because it takes some time to get the data in, but there hasn't been an appreciable shift west on the Google DeepMind. And I will effort to get that up to you guys here shortly. I'm going to one thing I do want to look at here real quickly. You know, just real quick for my friends in the Bahamas, the consensus central line here would be like between Long Island and the Acklands, which I think is about where the Hurricane Center has it right now as well. All right, so I'll effort to get that up to you. Hey, Discovery Bay having light rains. Appreciate that. Good evening, Lockums. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, welcome to anyone just tuning in. Appreciate you guys. You know, we're here for you guys in the long term. We're on right now. We'll talk about our coverage coming up, but you know, obviously we're going to be on for a significant time as the storm approaches, and we'll discuss that. Part of how I'm going to play when I'm on live is going to be dependent on just how slowly this thing wants to churn, right? You know, but we're on for you right now. Portmore with some light rain. I'm very sorry to hear about your father. Wishing the best for him. Yeah, well, the temperature drops a bit as the extra cloud coverage and the rain begins to move in. So sure, I mean, it is, you know, it is part of the situation with these storms because there's just a lot of moisture coming in and things will be a little bit cool from time to time. That breeze can be on the chillier side as well. All right, let me I want to try and get you guys this latest Google DeepMind here. It won't take too long, I don't believe. I will be answering chat as we move along too. Sweet Sugar City in St. Kitts. Well, appreciate the thoughts. Thank you, Keith. Love to hear from all of my Media Mundo community as well. I mean, obviously this channel is dedicated to forecasts across the Caribbean and the Bahamas, times of impactful weather. I'm going to go on live and cover this. Hopefully you guys on Jamaica remember me from Barrow last year. If you tuned in for that coverage and you're tuning back in again this year, first of all, welcome. Please join us at quieter times as well. We generally have a lot of fun on the channel, so we hate to do, only just the worst times. Come join us during the daily forecast updates and drop some comments as well. But appreciate all of those who have found the channel either previously or very recently during this storm. Again, we're going to get you covered here. We've got some live reports on the island to come your way, monitoring the situation for Jamaica and other areas down the road, including Cuba and portions of Hispaniola, Turks and Caicos, and the Bahamas as well. Yeah, throw those hearts out in chat. I appreciate that. All right. Give me just one more second here. I'm going to throw that into my system. Now you guys are seeing our moderators and our administrator dropping some questions into chat. A couple of things first. If you want to answer those questions, that's great because, we love to get an idea of what's happening. But they're also heads up, right? Things you should be thinking about, right? Do you know where your nearest shelter is? Do you have an evacuation plan? Have you secured the objects in your yard? Things like that. Maybe you weren't exactly thinking about them or they weren't top of mind, but you're seeing them asked as questions here. Maybe that's a nice reminder. So use that as kind of a checklist, if you will. You can go back and look at our admin questions that you guys have seen, and it gives you an idea of the things you should be preparing for. I mentioned this in yesterday's video as well. I hope that everyone who is on daily medication has a good supply of that, right? Because again, when this storm hits, right, we're going to lose communication, we're going to lose internet, we're going to lose power, we're going to have roads that might be impassable for days, right? Depending on the amount of water that floods those areas, the debris that could be over some of those areas, and even some roadways that could be washed out. So traveling could be impeded or not even possible for days and days and days. And, businesses could continue to be closed. Without power, we're not pumping gas. So you get the idea that the infrastructure problems that a storm like this can cause can have appreciable impacts to your life. And if you're on a medication that is very important to you on a daily basis, you want to make sure you have a supply to get you through this storm. All right, hopefully we'll get that in just a second. Let's check back in with See Jamaica. Again, you can find them on YouTube. Just looking at a quick shot of what they've got. This is from Flatbridge. Now this is, again, an area where we'll start to see the water level rise and debris that could, clog up underneath that flat bridge. And certainly the water level could go over that bridge and there could be debris and the bridge could be closed, and all that is, a possible scenario here. And this is a live look to Halfway Tree, I believe. And again, quiet right now as far as the winds go. Not much of a breeze there at this point in time. Obviously, things are wet, but we don't really have a significant squall right now. And, some folks on the roadways, hopefully things will be, okay there in the short term. A little bit quieter overall, but not a lot of activity on the streets, which is what I like to see, because even though things are quiet right now, we want to be sheltering in place, right? We don't want to have a lot of active, activity outside because, we just don't know when that next squall might want to be approaching. So the Halfway Tree Transport Center there. Again, see Jamaica on YouTube if you guys want to check out a little bit more of live cameras there across the island. All right, so let's see if we got our new Google DeepMind up here. All right. I'm actually looking at the old one here. Try and force it in. All right. I'll bring it to you as soon as I possibly can, I promise. We get back over to the chat. Watching from the Cayman Islands. Melissa is still drifting westward. Can you say anything on that? Well, again, I've talked about it for a while because everyone is noticing it, and I am too, right? There's absolutely a turn to the west in the short term. It looks like it might even be bobbling south, you know. But again, when you have a storm, okay, when you have a storm that has 175-mile-an-hour winds and the steering currents are still very light, bobbles, shifts in the track in the short term is expected, right? So it is interesting, to say the least, that has turned west for the last 2 hours. But is that a little bit of a bobble, or is that really a trend? Again, you know, the overall outlook of the wind profile around this storm as far as steering currents go. Let me just be able to do this one more time. Bring up the telestration here, but I also want to bring up this trough. So why is it expected to do the turn to the north and eventually to the north and to the east, right? Great question. Well, I can't. All right. I'm going to get one of those little pins is what I'm going to get. What I wanted to do here is I wanted to give you a little bit broader view first. All right. We got a trough coming in through the eastern side of the United States. Okay. Let me show you the surface winds associated with that. So I'm going to bring on surface winds. Okay. We'll walk through this together. Understanding, right? Understanding that, you know, funky things can happen. But do you notice that in the Gulf, the winds are beginning to turn out of the north now, right? And that you notice that we had an area of high pressure here, but now the wind field is beginning to get a little bit more muddied on the east side as this trough moves in. There is here, and if I go over to, you have to give me a little bit here. Do this. I am working on the fly here. Right. You go away. Let's go to 500 millibars. Okay. So do you guys see how at 500 millibars, mid-levels of the atmosphere, right? We'll get a little bit scientific, that's fine. You guys see how these winds are beginning to turn out of the southwest, okay? And you notice that the other 500 millibar winds are here with Melissa because Melissa is so vertically stacked, right? It's showing up in the models because of its wind field. But ultimately what that's happening is it's allowing a weakness to form in the ridge and should give this a bit of an escape route to the north, right? So the ridge is breaking down here, and all of these southwest winds are going to be dropping in, likely to pick up the storm and push it along, right? That's the forecast after sitting in between two areas of high pressure for the last 5 days. You know, the eroding of the ridge, the weakness to the north, the trough coming in, and the pickup of the storm. If I clear this off, again, there's like 2 steps that I have to do every time, and I'm gonna have a word with the Chris. But if I just zoom in again, right, and I come over here to the discussion. So this is the scientific part of what the Hurricane Center puts out every 6 hours. Okay, so let me find this here. All right, and you guys can read this paragraph with me if you want to, but let me read this. Melissa is starting its north turn, and the initial motion is now northwest at 315 degrees at 3 knots. The mid-level ridge north of Melissa continues to weaken as a deep layer mid-latitude trough moves eastward through the southeast United States into the southwest Atlantic. This should cause the hurricane to turn northward during the next 6 to 12 hours at a continued slow forward speed after 18 hours. So as we get into early on Tuesday morning, Melissa should turn northeast with a slight increase in forward speed as the mid-latitude westerly flow becomes the dominant steering mechanism. A continued northeast motion with a significant increase in forward speed is expected from 36 hours through the end of the forecast period. Okay, so on the forecast track, the center of Melissa will be near or over Jamaica late tonight or Tuesday, eastern sides of Cuba Tuesday night and early Wednesday, and then move through the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos on Wednesday. So that's the discussion of what we just talked about, right? So that's what the models are picking up on. Again, why are the spaghetti plots of the hurricane models showing the track that it has? Why is the Google DeepMind still showing all 50 members over the island? Because that is the scenario in the atmosphere that they feel like is steering this storm. Can things change? Can there be features that are stronger or weaker than what is forecast in the models? Absolutely. That's why it's not an exact science, right? It's not. But we have a very narrow window of time for this storm to do something outrageously different than what the models are showing. As you guys know, the cone of uncertainty widens over time. The forecast error widens over time because the models aren't as skillful deeper in time. That being said, they've gotten a lot better. They've gotten a lot better. Intensity-wise, they're still struggling with these storms, but track-wise, they really have gotten a lot better. Now, we'll see how this plays out. Okay, we'll see if this west turn continues. We would have to get this storm to be at least 30 miles west of Jamaica to really have significant differences in what the central and the eastern side of the island would see. But even a track 30 miles to the west, and that is allowing for a big swing west at this point in time when your storm, right, is very generously, as far as I could keep going with this, 350 miles wide, double the size of Jamaica. The tropical storm force inner core winds, which are likely over 100 miles an hour, are 157 miles wide, right? So you get your sustained hurricane force winds out 30. You get your 50 to 74 mile an hour winds, probably in this 150 mile an hour range, right? 150 mile range. That's basically the width of the island. So you would have to have a storm that really goes much farther west for us to be talking about lower impacts out east, and even in the central or the western side of the island, still very significant impacts. Unfortunately, this storm is just that powerful. It's just that strong. It's just that big. Does that make sense to everyone? Let me know. If that explanation, was understood, please let me know. I'm happy to continue to talk about it. Hey, Vancouver, how you doing? Obviously, there's all kinds of structural infrastructure on Jamaica, concrete buildings. We do have some wooden frames. We have metal frames, metal roofs. There are different varieties of infrastructure, but even the most significant infrastructure with a storm of this magnitude is subject to extreme damage, right? Whether that's complete structural failure or not, with some of the strongest, hardened infrastructure, that's satellite imagery it is about as intense of a storm that has ever been seen, right? Pure satellite image. That's just, looking at things like the Dvorak and other satellite-based intensity derivatives. It's about as powerful a storm that's ever been out here. Thank you, Farah. Now again, look, there is room for error here. And that would be fantastic. But, there's the science behind why it is likely to do what it's forecast to do. But these storms have certainly done things that we don't expect. I am interested in this west movement with you guys as well. I'm curious to see how long it will go. It does look like you almost see it here. You see these purples? It does look like the eye is contracting just a little bit, and even deeper convection is developing along it. So it is a very interesting look to the storm in like the last hour and a half. Again, even a slight wobble south, but nothing that I've seen has this trying to turn to the south. Again, wobbles. If you look at this last 6 hours, even just a little bit on the drunk side. But again, 3 mile an hour motion. There's nothing consistent about the storm with its motion right now. Just so weak. The eye just looks like it's shrinking a little bit. For most of this Monday, it was a very consistent, on average, about 10 nautical miles wide, which is indicative of a high-end hurricane. Consistent there. It does look like potentially a little bit of a contraction of the eye in the very short term. We'll see if that's just a little bit. And there's still a ton of lightning around this storm too, the eye. Ton of lightning. Maybe the eye is more like 8 miles wide now from 10. If I go back out here, it's probably shrunk by about 2 miles. Not a lot, but a little bit of a shrinkage in the eye. Again, fluctuations within this inner core structure happen all the time. From here, what happens, we'll have to watch, right? Does the storm... Look, we've talked about this before, guys. Hurricanes this size, this intense, they can't stay this strong forever. They kind of blow their top a little bit, right? And they are likely to fluctuate in intensity and potentially weaken some, right? So to stay of a hurricane of 175 for an extended time is not likely. This storm is likely to go under some structural changes where the maximum sustained winds reduce a bit. But again, appreciably, what impacts is that going to have on Jamaica? Is it going to really bring, winds that are much significantly less to really cause any differences? I'll continue to discuss the fact that, any structure that will fail in 160 mile an hour sustained winds is very likely to fail at 140 mile an hour sustained winds, and is very likely to fail at 120 mile an hour sustained winds. And just how low do you get before you have changes to structural damage from this storm? You probably have to get a lot lower than 175. Where is that number? Again, for most structures, it's got to be a lot lower than that. And again, that's the inner core sustained winds from the hurricane. Areas east, Kingston area east, sure, a reduction in some maximum sustained winds and a little jog west, maybe a great jog west relative to what we have on the track right now, would bring a slightly better scenario here. But remember, we're still seeing 9 to 13 foot storm surge. So I just don't want us to get transfixed on exactly where the center is going to go, because the impacts are just going to be felt so far and wide with a storm this big. Wish it wasn't the case, guys, but impacts are going to be felt in a tremendously wide area, and significant impacts, and a tremendous amount of rain is going to be coming along too. Starting to get some rain in Kingston. Third sounds about right. I think we've had 180. Yeah, 150 again. Still 906. 906. The only thing that changed from the 2 o'clock to the 5 o'clock was that they changed the direction from west-northwest to northwest. But honestly, it really is still going more west-northwest than anything. And really, over the last hour, it's been going a little bit due west. So we'll see how that goes. Again, this all, in my opinion, right now is a very short-term bobble more than anything. The longer-term atmospheric steering currents, the steering flow, are likely to play out as we just discussed, where the storm does and is forced to turn north, slightly north of east potentially, before it either, again, we'll plausibly say slightly west of Jamaica or over Jamaica, and then accelerating from there. Still a high chance of landfall. Yes, indeed. It is forecast right now to make landfall as either a low-end Cat 5 or a high-end Cat 4. I believe we are still in that 155 to 160, which would make it, the 160 would make it a Cat 5. Okay? Again, that will just be for the record books. The difference to what we're going to see on the island is not going to matter. 155, 160, heck, 140. It's just, unfortunately, it's just not going to matter. If you guys just tuning in, this is some video that Jimmy sent me earlier. This is from the Southfield area of St. Elizabeth Parish. And again, it's a very common sight along the southern parishes here where the winds are just picking up in a more consistent fashion. We've had some squalls and there's been some decent rain here, but, at this point in time, you can just see that wind, even at 30, 40 miles an hour, whatever this might end up being, it's still dancing these power lines. These power lines aren't going to hold up for much longer, unfortunately, here. And I was talking with Justin, who has been sending us the videos out of the Treasure Beach area. They lost power probably around noontime, maybe even slightly earlier than that, which is why I was asking, and let me ask it again, if you are on Jamaica, do you still have power? Thank you, PCPA. Says, love the more detailed explanation and technical side of it. Just found your channel due to Melissa subbed. Well, I appreciate that. And I appreciate y'all taking a quick second hitting that subscribe button. Again, we've been doing this for a couple of years, but we're a growing channel. We love your support. The biggest thing, the reason why we're on, is to get this information out, right? To pass this information on so that those who are in harm's way can take this information and make the best decisions that they possibly can.
We will take a break from Rusty and come back to Rusty, but I've posted some of these videos, but I want to show you a bit another perspective and a few videos of the early effects of what is going on. And call Flight Green for us, please. I have something to ask him. Call Flight Green for us, please.
Missed Jamaica? Hardly. I'm meteorologist Todd Gross, and at first glance with the westward motion, you'd think that it just drifted right by Jamaica and had no chance of hitting the island. But that's just not the case. You see, the jet stream over the eastern United States is dipping down today and is going to pick up the storm and shove it northeastward, just like when we get coastal storms in the eastern United States. It's going to follow that path. But I want to point out that at 2 o'clock in the morning tonight, the storm is going to be southwest of the island by about 50 miles. And then it's going to move in the western side of Jamaica, which is the change in track that we talked about late last night. And that continues then to move across the island and then pass off the north coast later in the afternoon tomorrow. That's pretty slow. But the big news here, of course, is that it's moving in from the south to the north, or southwest to northeast. And with the circulation around the storm being counterclockwise, that means the winds will be coming up into the eastern part of the island and central part of the island in a way that Jamaica actually has never seen before, not even with Gilbert. So to be clear, the storm is likely to make landfall in St. Elizabeth Parish. That's going to happen approximately 8 o'clock in the morning, Tuesday morning. It's then going to travel northeastward and exit in St. Anne Parish. And all the areas just east of there by about 30 miles. That includes Manchester, Clarendon, and even a little part of St. Catherine, the northwest clip part of St. Catherine, and right in through there, through St. Anne, and even St. Mary. Those areas are likely to bear the brunt of the storm. Now, there's very little wiggle room left. Should this just be, let's say, 5 miles or 3 miles farther to the west, then we're going to have a bigger problem up in Montego Bay. But right now, Negril looks like it's going to get the weakest part of the storm. Montego Bay getting a hurricane, but barely. But everywhere else east of that is going to get the full brunt of the storm. Now, this is slightly good news for Kingston. Slightly good news, because the winds will be coming out of the west-southwest when the closest pass to Kingston is, and that's going to bring the water right in with a huge storm surge, which could be anywhere from, let's say, 5 to 9 feet there and 9 to 13 feet over around Clarendon. So that's the storm surge of the ocean coming in. But it's really not that great, because even though it'll be farther from the storm, which is the good news for Kingston, the problem is the wind direction is going to be really bad, because it's going to be coming in off the water. You don't have the mountains to protect you or the land to protect you in terms of the wind direction. It'll be coming right in from the water. So it's a sort of good news, bad news situation for Kingston and points east. There's also another slight bit of good news. The rainfall estimate is down a little bit on the east tip of the island, the mountains, which go up to 7,000 feet high. That was going to be at 40 inches max. Now we're looking at a basic 30-inch max for a good chunk of the island. Basically, most of the island gets up to 30 inches of rain. Now, that's a really huge amount of rain. Think about that. If that was snow, that would be 300 inches of snow, or what, 20 feet? I mean, this is an enormous amount of rain. So when I say this is slightly good news, I mean really slightly good news. And it's also bad because now it's spread over a larger part of the island. All right, so previously it looked like the rain was going to be the east half of the island in terms of the flooding potential. Now it looks like most of the island is involved. And remember, these mountains go to 2,000 to 3,000 feet right here in the central part of Jamaica as well, and will be kind of wringing out the moisture with that 30-inch amount right there in the central part. So that's not going to be, a picnic. That's going to be really tough, with numerous landslides, which are going to affect so many homes, and so many people will be misplaced. Make sure that you seek shelter if you haven't already. Go to an official shelter or somebody that lives high up, away from where this water may flow down. Now, this may be the last time that I get to speak with you before you lose power and cell phone service. So I want to just know that our hearts go out to you, and we wish you the very best. We're all praying for you, and we really want you to be safe. So listen to all of the emergency preparedness agencies, because they're giving you guidance as to what you should be doing. They know what's best, and you should really be following all those instructions. You should remain in your shelter as the storm is about to move in, becoming really bad tonight. And by midnight, it's really going to kick in right in through here. And then by tomorrow morning, the entire island is going to be enveloped by this thing. I'm meteorologist Todd Gross. Please be safe.
Right. Let us go to a video concern. Southwest. On the car fly green, Car fly green, that's so. I could say if a mistake.
That's Sheil Blake, and I'm from Plagaman district.
You're outside here this morning. What happened?
What happened? There is no shelter for the people. They provide bus, but there's no shelter because right now we have a community center over there and it's locked up because them say it's not convenient for the people. So right now, there's no shelter. Me have to sleep. Me live a Flaggerman and me have to sleep a Red Bank last night. Me have to give the community, we live in a zinc shed, my house, because I'm living in a 2-floor house up the road. Me have to book it out. Me have to give my friend, me have to give my family, me have to give my colleagues. You see, because me and me one. And right now, I meet she bar me a shelter because the community center, convenient. Don't a PJ planes, the roof blew off the last time. They fix back part tight, they don't fix back the whole height. So people are saying it better than risk it at them yard. Right now, me have an auntie at Treasure Beach, we need to evacuate. There's a must. And she don't have nowhere to go because the space is already taken. There's no more space. You see, Mitchie I put up people, me I put up people, me have a few more friends up the road I put up people. You see it, and we are not government, so we need to know why we need shelter.
The government send transport for you.
Transport, but transport to where?
Take you to the nearest available shelter.
But there's no available shelter.
That can't be.
There's no available. Junction lock, Mayfield lock, Flaggerman Community Center lock, Peter Plains lock. So where are we supposed to go? There's no shelter provided for the people. And I think in this hurricane, there's a lot of people is going to get hurt because there's no refuge to run to.
How many persons you have at home?
How many persons at home right now?
Yeah, that you put up.
Well, me don't want to take it as joke, but say at my house right now, about 100 people, there's no less. I tell you, because there's no shelter. He said because it's a 2-floor deck top house, people line up outside and we can't turn them back. There's no shelter. You see, the tree them need to clip on the roadside, the drain them need to. Me one guard no wash out already. Just around the corner right there, right in front of the supermarket. You can see it from beach road garden. You see, just because the drain overflow.
Right.
Good evening to the government and the stress where we are going through. Community center. He spoke about the community center on Mr. Green's spreadsheet that is on the ODPEM website for shelters. Number 70, Flaggerman Community Center. That is the only shelter provided for the people of Flaggerman, the Flaggerman Community Center. But we are told, Mr. Green, by this young man, that the Flaggerman Community Center isn't open. Where then does people go if you just put the building on a list, but there's no administrative or operational duty to make sure these buildings are available to people? Because simply just put them down on paper and telling the people that that is a shelter. No, the people don't have anywhere to go. Well, the young man is saying the Flaggerman Community Center is closed. And on the list, the spreadsheet that is on the ODPEM website, you have it there parish by parish, and you can look constituency by constituency. But it did a parish by parish for each parish. The only shelter that is listed for the community of Flaggerman is the Flaggerman Community Center, which residents, Mr. Green, are saying the Flaggerman Community Center is not open because they say no fit for purpose or whatever, not available or whatever. what happens? Because by now, Newell Secondary, because the nearest place you possibly could have carried them is possibly Newell High School, or so on. Down this are supposed to reach capacity. I don't know what Williamsfield Seventh-day Adventist Church is like, or if them a give up the church. But that's also a far away from Flaggerman. So these people were telling us that they do not care. Everything about this thing is showing them up that they do not care. Who is ADPEM have the responsibility of coordinating the whole of this. ADPEM is under the office of the Prime Minister. Right now we see there's a shamble coordination being carried out. And all of this can cause loss of life, such as the Prime Minister releasing the state of emergency, imposing the mandatory evacuation at a point later than he should. Colonel Charles told us this morning that there are vulnerable adults in his area to be moved, in his constituency, to be moved. But the government doesn't have the logistic capability to do so. Not my words, Colonel Charles. And yet they're still coming out to tell you that they care. More than that, they're even telling you, both we are fully prepared. Don't be fooled by politicians' sweet talk, Jamaica people. Look out for yourself. Let us show you an image from Southwest St. Elizabeth. Most of them are posts on the channels as standalone videos, so you will see them. So I'm not going to play a lot of them because you will see them. They're already posted on the channel.
A second. All right, people.
Hold on.
My fiance here. In here. That freak man. Hey! Wait. Listen, guys, if you could feel what I feel, I know
they're already posted on the channel as standalone videos, so you will see them right across the three YouTube channels. But just to show you some of the early effects of
Melissa. You understand what I'm saying to you? It is not a joke out here. I'm just trying to zoom in so you can understand, because sometimes closer up, it doesn't really do that. As I was saying to you guys, because I was helping people last year, sending barrels over from Beryl from UK, when I got here, a lot of the GoFundMe pages and stuff people were worried about giving it to individuals like me. So me and a few of my friends had to group together and get the barrels over here. But when I got here, most of that aid did not hit the people here. So I started a GoFundMe, which my friend and my sister will be managing. So if I go offline, people, my sister will be on. If I go offline, my sister will be on, be able to access my TikTok to be able to share with people the GoFundMe. Because I came on also to let people know that when people are donating to GoFundMe, this is not a joke. This is not no siphoning off money rubbish. You understand what I'm saying? This is real life. You understand? And it's going to have real impact. Thank you, family. This is not a joke. You understand? I will share the GoFundMe. Let me see if I can share it on here while I've got so many of you. And I'm not telling people to give it now. You understand? I'm telling people that you guys will be able to see on the report what's happening. But I'm telling you now, thank you, Miss HMM and Sue. I'm telling you now, people's roofs are already starting to blow up, even in this level. And it's already 100 miles from us. You understand? So you can imagine. Let me see if I can get somebody to share that. I don't even know how to do this. I'm not a huge TikToker, people. So please bear with me. I will try. I don't even know how to make a comment. Listen, this is not a cry for money, so just don't mistake me, you understand? I just know from Beryl, we put it out late and no one, and people didn't help for weeks. Add GoFundMe to it. So how do I add it? Hold on. Maybe you can add it if I send it to you. To it. Hold on a minute, guys. For those that have asked me to add the GoFundMe, sorry, I'm actually starting to get a cold out here now. For those of you that, now, but I'm telling you, there's people that we're going to have to go and help right now because this is the grief I am and I'm on a bit of a hill. So what I'm saying to you is everybody that's already by the sea that is feeling this right now, their roots are gone. Do you understand what I mean? They're gone. Yes, I've always lived in the UK. I've got a British accent. So I flew into Jamaica a month ago because I'm supposed to be getting married with my fiance next month. I spend about 2 or 3 months in Jamaica every year. One to support Jamaican people through hurricanes and stuff like this, and to build the film industry out here as well. So we're supposed to get married. So we came out 13th of September to start preparations for that, and we did not know that we were going to be hitting a hurricane.
Right, the first one was South St. Elizabeth. This is St. Catherine, Ballas Hill or something like that.
Yeah, man, give thanks to you, you know. Yo, big up on yourself, you know. Yeah, my friend, more can make up and make up funds. Yeah, man, respect. More respect, you know. Body, no, my friend. Body, no. Body, no, my friend. Body. This is St. Catherine, Jamaica. Chat more and grown this about money blow out of my pocket and the breeze feel like you want to take me up off my ground. So me I kind of a little bit be careful and see. Yeah man, give thanks you give them. Thank you very much. Anything me get. And anything me get. Anything me get me thankful. Good morning. Chat. Anything me get me thankful, chat. Cap, yo, big up yourself, you know. Come in my side. Yeah, work with it. Send catching to them, man. Big up yourself, you know. Up, you know, anything. No care a little baby. No make care a little bit if you want it. Anything.
All right, let's go back over to Rusty and get the updates because all of those videos, you will see them on all of the channels.
Now north to south, it's only about 6. So there is some structural changes going on within this storm right now. But all of that's fairly, all of that is understood to occur at some point in time. These storms can't stay at 175. They're going to go under eyewall replacement cycles every few days. Melissa has yet to do so. So we could be seeing that as we speak. And again, this very erratic motion over the last couple of hours could be a sign of that as well. Now, ultimately, again, how does this affect the overall track down the road? We'll have to see how that plays out. Keeping an eye on the models and what the Hurricane Center wants to say. But one thing I can tell you is that, it's agonizingly creeping to the west right now at a couple of miles an hour, which puts the time frame for landfall or wherever the storm wants to go in proximity to Jamaica, just deeper in time on Tuesday, right? If this storm is not making any closer approach right now, we're going to have to keep backing up this time frame a little bit. I certainly believe now landfall is likely to not occur until after daybreak tomorrow, but being on the northeast side of the storm, we'll get the strongest winds and the highest rainfall totals lashing the island, continuing to see the weather go downhill tonight and as we go overnight as well. All right. Friends, I'm going to take my first quick break of the live stream. I'm going to load up a couple of new things for you guys here, but stick around because I've got a lot of different facts for you guys to take a look at here as I take this quick break. And you know I've got that fantastic music for you guys as well. So I'll be back in just a second.
All right, we'll go back to those videos until Rusty get back on screen. We will go back to those videos of some of the early effects of Melissa certain places in the country.
No, man, we're not going in the house, man. I say, I hurt, man. One Rosalie chat. Thank you for doing nothing, pretty girl. Thank you, another one. Oh, gosh, man. Whoa. Yeah, my friend. Body, now. Grab me up and scream. Yeah, man. Same so it can, man. Same so one Melissa, man. See, probably. Thank you for your honor, my friend. Yeah, man. Thank you for your honor, body, now.
Just one sec. This is the transport center downtown at the moment. That's how it's panning out on that side of town. Hold on. Oh, made trouble here. Oh no, I troubled the wrong one. No. Bear with me. I mess up things here. Go back to this. You fool. Aren't I silly?
Yeah, we tell them so we're not send catching. You can't pin your comment. Big up yourself, Anna, my friend. Body now. Oh, I'm here, man. Body now. Yo, thanks for the roses. They're a pretty girl. Roses, they're a pretty girl.
Were out and persons had to seek shelter at a neighbor's shop. So wanted to find out what was the issue with shelter.
Beautiful. Yeah, man. Breadfruit, who want breadfruit? Breadfruit, fly and zinc and everything. Yeah, man, say it, man. I don't know normal, man. Yeah, man, thank you, man. Thank you, guys. Yeah, man, fix up. Yeah, man, Melissa around. Respect for the cream, although we're not doing cream. But you know, bad. Yeah, man, I send catching this, man. On place called Bella's Gate. Eh? Shot. In a normal chat. Just pray for it, chat. Pray for it. More look more give me make up the money, you know. And I send me get 2,000 Jamaica dollars to give for them. More make next 5,000. Something me I beg. How can I rank it? How can I rank it? Should I rank it?
Hold on. There's another. Where is it? Where is that one? I think this is it. Let's see if that's it.
A second.
No, that's not the one we're looking for. It looks like that one not coming as studio. But never mind. Jamaica people, by now, everybody should be in shelter. Everybody should be in shelter by now because there's no more time. Because you don't want to get caught up in a swift arrival of Melissa overnight. Melissa could speed up at any time. We are hoping that Melissa going straight pan the south and down by the turn. It quite likely, or for whatever reason, we're going to get something hard. The hardness where it come, we probably don't want it that hard because we know the country we live in. We know the politicians that runs our country, and we already, if we are open and we are look keenly, we already see the role play and the foul play
here now that I took a quick break. Again, Media Mundo is sponsored by the Lean Law Firm of Central Florida. We want to welcome them as our sponsor. You can go to leanombilaw.com if you guys would like more information. We're to continue our coverage here of Major Hurricane Melissa. Again, this storm, agonizingly slow right now, about 80 miles southwest of the southwest side of Jamaica. And over the last couple of hours here has really begun an erratic movement. So we'll be monitoring that together as far as exactly where this storm wants to move in a very slow.
Western St. Elizabeth, and then it will continue its way across the island. By late in the day, by evening hours, we are expecting to see that center, still a major hurricane moving off the coast. Earlier in our previous press briefing, I did indicate that although I told you what the wind speeds would have been expected to be when it makes landfall, but I indicated that it would have been Category 4. On further review, it would be a Category 5 hurricane making landfall in the southwest, and this is according to the current projections. So it will move across, starting as a Category 5, but then reducing in intensity as it moves toward the north coast, and then it would make its exit and head toward the eastern part of Cuba. That's the forecast track. Here we see an image that indicates somewhat where the peak storm surge would occur. With the hurricanes, although you have the flooding that occurs because of the rainfall, we also have flooding that comes in coastal areas that is driven by the wind on the waves of the sea. So the wind actually pushes the water of the sea onto the land, and that is what creates storm surge for those residents who live in coastal areas. Of course, if there is an inlet or a bay, that is usually the areas where the storm surge is most impactful. And so in the areas of Black River, Alligator Pond, I believe, will experience some amount of storm surge. Here you see a closer picture of that area, and you see that it does extend somewhat inland. So we have to be careful about if we are in that general area of St. Elizabeth, where it would be just east of the center of the system as it makes that landfall. So these images show where those storm surges are likely to be most significant. Here now we look at the rainfall forecast for the 4 days going up to the 31st of October. And here we see that mostly central and eastern parishes would be inundated by the heaviest rainfall that would get up to 30 inches. We're talking about 750 millimeters of rainfall. We're not accustomed to measuring that. I'm not even too sure if our rain gauges will fully be able to deal with that kind of capacity before they are renewed. But we, of course, will make every effort to provide the best data after the event as possible. But here we see the heavy rainfall producing significant flooding, and this will be over most of the island. The other areas of the island going toward the western end would actually be receiving more of the rainfall as well. But because the heaviest rainfall that is associated with this hurricane is going to be to the right side of the eye as it makes its way across Jamaica. So we're likely to see more of the flooding on the right side, on the central and eastern parishes, more so than in the extreme west, where we would then be on the left of the center of the system. That is basically the presentation at this time, and I'm sure Minister will accommodate some questions right afterwards.
Thank you so much, Evan. Any questions from media in the room? No questions. So I'm going to ask the questions then, since no one has questions. Evan, tonight, what should we expect? Again, just tell them tonight. There are people who are out there. There's still people doing preparatory work. And we want to know, can they continue to do it? When do they need to come in? And again, when will conditions deteriorate so that no one should be on the road?
Okay, thank you for that question. The conditions will gradually be deteriorating this evening. We've already experienced some of that deterioration over southern parishes. Also in the east, we've experienced an increase in cloud cover, an increase in rainfall over the areas, and more intense rainfall taking place. Originally, it would just be some incidents of light rainfall that occur over sections of the country. Now we're seeing more moderate rainfall occurring over sections of the island. We have not come into that large mass that surrounds the eye yet, but that is what is progressing across Jamaica, and so we expect that the intensity will gradually increase as we go through tonight. We'll also be continuing to experience strong winds, tropical storm force winds moving across the country, mainly over southern parishes first, but then moving over to northern parishes as the center moves closer to the coastline. Also, as we go through the night, we also are expecting that we will have hurricane force winds beginning to impact, starting with the southwestern part of the island and then progressing across to central parishes. We're not expecting that the hurricane force winds will actually get all the way to the eastern end of the island, but tropical storm force winds will continue. The hurricane force winds extend only 45 kilometers or 30 miles from the center of the system. So if you're outside of, say, 50 kilometers from that center as it moves, your experience is going to be mostly tropical storm force winds. Don't take it too lightly. That can also produce quite a bit of damage, and the rainfall that's associated with the system will still be very much that you could have flooding in any area of this country. So expect all of that as we go through the night. The hurricane conditions will get, of course, increasingly intense as we get into the morning hours of Tuesday.
Thank you very much, Evan. I don't see any other questions. You've heard it. It's still category 5. Oh, there is one question. Can we get the microphone to someone who never asks questions?
Mic check. There we go. Evening, everybody. Mahiri Stewart, Nationwide News. In terms of the path that this hurricane is taking, we know what to expect when it impacts Jamaica. But what's Melissa going to do after it passes Jamaica?
Okay, that's a good question. And actually, because we are our brother's keepers and we have a number of neighbors in the Caribbean area that we need to pay attention to and also, keep their interests at heart. It's going to be moving really toward eastern Cuba as long as it continues on the path that it is projected right now. So after moving over our northern coastline, it is expected to continue over the waters between Cuba and Jamaica. There's only 90 miles of space there, so it will move quickly through that area. I should have pointed out that the speed of forward movement is going to be increasing as the center moves toward Jamaica's southern coastline and while it moves over Jamaica. So it will move a little bit faster than it has been, but it will continue to move, and then it will get to southeastern Cuba, and then it is expected to continue over the southeastern islands of the Bahamas. At that time, it should still be a hurricane, but it might not be a major hurricane at that time, having been reduced in strength by moving over the two land masses, both Jamaica and eastern Cuba. But it will move over southeastern Bahamas and then continue over the Atlantic, possibly moving close to Bermuda all the way out in the Atlantic afterwards.
Check again. So when it comes over the country, you said earlier that it's going to be affected by not being over the waters. But once it comes over our land and goes back into the waters, is it going to then re-energize as it goes towards Cuba?
Yes, that would happen, but as I said, it's really only 90 miles of water, and so the increase may not be that significant before it gets to Cuba, and then it would exit Cuba and then pick up more speed with much more water area than land area as it goes through the Bahamas and over into the Atlantic. It may pick up a little bit more strength, but then it would be again moving into cooler waters at this time where it wouldn't be able to get much stronger. We're not expecting it to again regain category 5 hurricane force. Thank you.
Thank you, Evan. Earlier we were doing longitude and latitude, And we heard a word from Evan that I'm not used to hearing. And so I had to look it up using AI, of course. And it was recurvature. He said it many times, recurvature. So I had to look it up. It's a change in the path of a tropical cyclone from a generally west to northwest track. So remember, it was going west. And then it moves then to a northeast or eastward track. So that's what recurvature is. So it was going to the west, but now it's going to turn and go towards the east. So thank you very much for teaching me another meteorological term today on all of Jamaica, that term. And so now we're going to go to the other man of the hour, or Minister of Local Government and Community Development, the man who is responsible for disaster response and who does a tremendous job of it. He is non-stop. He is here through the night, all through the day. Minister Mackenzie, I do not know how you do it, but you continue to serve this country, and we're very grateful for it. And so please tell us where we are with everything under your purview.
Thank you, Minister. You have been doing a good job yourself. Acknowledge my colleague who just walked in. There's a fine for being late. And to acknowledge the members of the support team, the JDF, the police, the Jamaica Fire Brigade, the Red Cross, and all the other entities, chairman of the board, members of the media. I want to start off by giving some updates as it relates to the operations of a Jamaica Public Service Company. And as you have been told by Mr. Thompson, that the southern part of the island is experiencing some challenges as we speak. Now, this update that has been provided to our center downstairs, and I want to make the point that all the information that is pertinent to the ongoing hurricane comes directly out of the ODPEM. So when we give the information, it is not hearsay or faked information. It is the information that has been gathered by the team, and each entity, for instance, all the utilities are here, both telephone, water, and light. So when we speak with a certain level of authority. A total of some 50,000 persons are without light in the following parishes as we speak: Portland, St. Thomas, St. Elizabeth, Manchester. Approximately 40,000 persons in the western end of the island are presently without power. And there are 4,000 in the eastern part of the island, and another 5,000 without light in central Jamaica. Transmission lines are out in Magati and Porous as a result of down power lines and poles in some instances. The Jamaica Fire Brigade reports a number of trees in some areas they have received reports, and they have a team out there removing the fallen trees, and with support in some instances from members of the community. You remember earlier this morning, the Prime Minister did indicate that the National Solid Waste Management Authority is on the road, and they are a part of that team island-wide that is helping to remove fallen trees right across the island. The Red Cross reported that at Veer Technical High School, approximately 300 persons are at the shelter, and the concerns that we have is that in short order, and I guess by now, the shelter would have reached its maximum capacity, and steps are being made to house persons seeking shelter at a different location. Just want to again remind persons going to our shelters to take your medication, walk with some biscuit for the first couple of hours, some water to make yourselves comfortable. And it is important that your personal documents, important documents, are well secured. The issue of shelters, ladies and gentlemen, Jamaicans, has become more pronounced because during our briefing meeting with the ADPEM and various persons, it was brought to my attention that the new wing of the transitional center at King Street, the Desmond Mackenzie Center, we'll have to activate that because the work of the police and the team on the ground has brought in more persons off the streets in the shelters, and that is very commendable. We are seeing an increase over the last couple of hours of persons responding and have gone into the shelters, which is good, but we still have a few that is still out on the road. I want to address some concerns around shelters that was brought to our attention concerning the Myersville area in southeast St. Elizabeth, and the fact that complaints were made about those shelters. I want to make it clear, ladies and gentlemen, that the shelters are provided for the needs of those who want to go to the shelters. There are no other considerations that are given when we open the shelters. So I don't want anybody to create the narrative that you have to be aligned one way or the other to access the shelters. And there seems to be some concerns raised about the operations of these shelters. So I want to advise that all the shelters in Southwest St. Elizabeth, the Myersville Division, are in operation, and Southeast, and that they have been provided with the requisite items to afford for the smooth operation of the shelters. We are in constant touch with our shelter managers across the island, and I know, and I want to say this, as soon as the conditions start to deteriorate in certain areas, the difficulty is going to show in making contact in the way that we would want the contact to be made. We have a very effective radio telecommunication system which is manned by the Jamaica Fire Brigade, and that system is up and running. It is a part of the JICA program that the government of Japan and the government of Jamaica has put in and has made us very efficient, and it is a system that the police has tied in, and all the major stakeholders across the country has access to the system. So our shelters are up and running, and I want to say to Jamaicans that I'm encouraging you still, you still have a little window to go into the shelters because it is important. There are also complaints about Ocho-Rios-I. That matter has been dealt with. And I want to thank the many concerned Jamaicans who continue to send me messages about the operations of shelters. And I really want to thank them and say how much it is appreciated. I gave an update this morning on the state of our shelters, and I did indicate that of the 880 odd shelters, So far, 133 shelters are in operation. The shelters are available, but so far only 133 of these shelters are fully operated with persons in there. The parishes of St. Mary, St. Anne, and Hanover are still 3 parishes that have no one in any of the shelters. The shelters in Hanover should be seeing people now, because based on Evan's forecast, places like Lucy, Chester Castle, other areas will face challenges, and I want to urge persons in these parishes to get to high ground as quickly as possible. Clarendon continue to lead the way. So far their numbers are 517, St. Catherine 254, St. Thomas 310, Trelawney 156, Portland 295, St. Elizabeth 182. I guess based on the other information coming in, that we will see an increase in the numbers of Jamaicans going to the shelters. As I said earlier on today, it is anticipated that more than 40 to 50,000 Jamaicans will be evacuated from certain areas, and we are expecting that number to grow. And again, emphasize the importance of sticking to genuine information. Almost every minute now, there is something out there in social media that has nothing to do with what is taking place. There is concerns that persons who genuinely wants to go to shelters are being convinced by others that it makes no sense that they go to the shelters. And many people have been told that you are safer at home than in our shelters. My first experience of a major hurricane at this level was Matthew in 2016, just shortly after I became the minister. And it was a testing time. Fortunately, Matthew changed course. But over the years, we have developed a system to improve the quality of our shelters. And I will not deny that some of our shelters might not meet the expectations of Jamaicans. I've said it before, the shelters are not a 5-star hotel. 90% of our shelters are schools, which were not really built for that purpose. And over the years, we have converted some of our shelters, some of the schools, into proper shelters. And we'll be rolling out over the next couple of years, starting next year, to improve on our shelters, because we are looking at the changes that are taking place in terms of our climate-related issues. And therefore, as a country, as a government, we have to move, and we have to make the kind of investment that will ensure that our citizens are comfortable in what we say and will respond to the issues when it arises. So, am I feeling better? Still not feeling better. When I look at Westmoreland, again, here's a parish that flooding is the norm. Now we are expecting excess rainfall, record high rainfall. So it means that flooding will become an issue. There's a community in Westmoreland, McNeil Lands, which for me is a major issue. And if anybody there is listening, I want to urge persons to encourage you to leave these areas and find a place where you will be safer. It makes no sense. And in closing, I want to, again, as I have been doing since these briefings have started, it is better to take that step than to pay that price. Don't worth it. This government is committed to work with every single Jamaican after the passage of Melissa to help to restore your way of life, to rebuild. The Prime Minister spoke about the various layers of insurance and coverage that an understanding government has put in place over the last 4 years to secure the Jamaican people. And when we meet after these meetings, we look at the way forward. Already we are starting to look at how are we now going to deal with the level of investigation that needs to be done to deal with the issues that will arise following burial. I want to thank the people who are working, the police, the fire brigade, the army, our disaster coordinators, our members of parliament, our councillors, and I want to say this. I am happy that as a government we recognize the role of the opposition and have engaged the opposition in discussions around the programs that is being undertaken by the government in a response. And we have been open, we have been clear, and if we are wrong, we are bold enough to say we are wrong. But all the decisions that we have taken to safeguard the Jamaican people, we stand by those decisions. It is the Jamaican people that have to work with us now to ensure that we minimize as best as we can whatever the outcome is. Thank you.
You see all the reports. Yes, you see all the reports that he has, and I have to acknowledge the head of ODPEM, Mr. Richard Thompson, who is also working really hard. Thank you, Richard. All right, so up next we have Minister Tufton. I know there are some other questions for Evan Thompson that we got online. They really have questions for you. They want to know more. We'll get to those after Minister Tufton speaks, our Minister of Health and Wellness.
Thank you very much, colleague Minister, and my apologies for being a little late, but my colleague and friend Desmond McKenzie understands, and I know he won't charge me. I want to just begin by recognizing my colleagues and other members in the room, the media, and of course the agencies. So a couple of things that re-update. Firstly, I was late because I was on a conference call with the health ministers of the Caribbean region, chaired by the head of CARICOM, who expressed the desire to support, and I gave them an update. And I want to just publicly thank my colleague ministers of health in the Caribbean who have offered to provide support wherever that is needed, including CARFA and CARICOM health ministers. So I got a little delayed because of that conversation. In terms of the updates, health centers remain closed as we had announced, but all hospitals remain open and all are prepared. I have done a number of visits over the past 24 hours or more, visiting some of these institutions, having conversations with the staff, and at the Emergency Control Center in New Kingston, headed by Dr. Dawkins Wright, who is here in the audience. We have had several briefs involving the respective regional health authorities and the hospital heads. And from all that I have seen, we are prepared and ready. There's adequate water storage supplies, adequate food both for staff and patient, adequate medical supplies, a logistics infrastructure which involves our own logistics but also coordination with other agencies like the Fire Brigade and others. And I think generally speaking, there's a staff that is ready and waiting. The message to them is firstly to take care of their family members, ensure that their homes are safe, and then commit themselves to ensuring that over the next number of hours, they will commit fully to serving the Jamaican people from a healthcare perspective. So that is in place. We are concerned about a few hospitals that are on the coastline. So Noel Homes in Hanover, Black River in particular, in St. Elizabeth because of where the storm will enter the country, and Falmouth, Trelawney. We have evacuation plans for those institutions. So today we started some evacuation efforts out of Black River. Fortunately, we just completed a 12-foot seawall on the coastline between the hospital and the sea, and that is in place, which will provide a buffer and some protection. But based on projections of 13 or more foot waves, we do anticipate a breach of that. So we have moved some of the services out of the hospital further inland and have relocated patients from the ground floor to the second floor, and hope that that will suffice for any surge that will take place. The other institutions have evacuation arrangements and will exercise that as the case may be. Each of those institutions, of course, have generator backup power that will take them hopefully through the period that may be downtime until power is restored. The staffing for the surge capacity are in place. Rosters are in place. Doctors, nurses, biomedical engineers, drivers, and porters, all of those are in place to deal with the possibility. Very sad to announce that even though the storm has not yet hit, we have had 3 deaths related to the preparation of the storm. One in Hanover, one in St. Catherine, and the other in St. Elizabeth. And these are due to persons preparing for the storm, unfortunately, cutting down of trees in particular. In one case, a tree fell on one of the individuals in St. Elizabeth. He was airlifted, and it's a health worker. He was airlifted to the University Hospital and succumbed to his injuries. Another case in Hanover, the same thing. And another case in St. Catherine. In one of the cases, there was an electrocution, as is reported to me, linked to the cutting down of trees. There have been about 13 other injuries linked to preparation, most of which are linked to persons falling off ladders or rooftops, trying to prepare for the storm. I just want to use the opportunity to urge Jamaicans, firstly, to express condolences to the family members who have lost loved ones, and the health system will provide support as necessary to those individuals. But to also urge Jamaicans, we understand the need to prepare, but we urge extreme caution in that preparation. If you need help, call for help, but be careful that you protect yourself even in the preparation, because already we're seeing the tragedy of lives lost. In terms of the challenges around the actual event, which very little can be done between now and early AM, which is when we expect the storm to hit. Outside of the preparation of the institutions, and we urge those home to ensure that they have adequate drinking water, because turbidity can impact quality of water. So to the extent that you can collect your water now while your pipes are still running, please store drinking water. The non-perishable foods, please be mindful of that and secure that to the extent that you have not already done so, and there's an opportunity so to do. We are aware that from a health perspective, post the event, there is the risk of contaminated water, contaminated food. The ministry, part of the discussion I had today with the public health team, we have just about 600 of them. These are the officers who go out into the field and visit, retail outlets, wholesalers, institutions, to ensure that the integrity of our food chain is maintained. They, under the law, have the authority to seize and dispose of foods that they suspect is contaminated, because a major consequence, if we get past the storm, is the ill effects of what happens after, and water and food are critical. So I just want to remind retailers, sellers of food, that they should put whatever is necessary in place to ensure that whatever is perishable is protected, but also to say that the team will be out in the field right after to examine and to ensure that the food supply remains intact, and they do have the law on their side to protect consumer safety. But the system will be ready to deal with that, but food-related diseases are very common after these types of events. In terms of our children, today I visited the Bustamante Hospital for Children. The key to our children is to provide them with psychosocial support during this period. The last major event we've had close to this one is 37 years ago, Hurricane Gilbert. And it is a frightening experience for those who have not experienced this kind of storm, wind and rain and flooding and so on. So we want to encourage our parents or adults or guardian support, and where they need help, please give them that support. Guide them as it relates to the after event exposure to water. They're always going to be tempted to go outside and play into the puddles of water, which oftentimes may be contaminated because of the runoff. Solid waste will be an issue naturally, because people throw things all over. The water will bring it to the lowest point, and there'll be a concentration of pollutants within that particular environment and space. The other issue is the mental health challenge within our society coming out of the trauma related to this. There are many persons who will be anxious, would be uncertain, be scared. We are beefing up our mental health facility. Just to remind you of our helpline, 888 New Life. That's 888-639-5433, and 876-838-4897. We're encouraging persons to use the lines if you need to talk to someone. We have members manning those lines on standby, and will provide whatever support that we can give. There are vulnerable populations in the society that we are mindful of. The older population who are chronically ill, those who require medication for their hypertension, diabetes, other forms of chronic illnesses. The NHF, I've had a meeting with the NHF. They are prepared to provide information and support. They're also prepared to deliver medication once the storm would have passed, and we're putting in place some creative ways to maneuver the obstacles that we would likely encounter after the storm. And what we would ask persons to do is to keep in touch using the One Love helpline, 888 One Love, for the vulnerable populations to be given whatever support they can. The final point I'd raise is the issue of persons volunteering to give support. So in disasters of this kind, because of who we are and the generosity of our diaspora, as well as just the globe, there's going to be a lot of offers to provide support. It's going to be important for us to ensure that that support is coordinated and that it is properly organized. Now, I know that ODPM and Minister Mackenzie will provide whatever channels of contributions and the management of that process. As it relates to health, we have put in place a mechanism through our charitable foundation and the National Health Fund to ensure that we are able to guide the type of support that may be needed in the immediate aftermath, the logistics of that support in terms of coming in, where it is stored, how it is distributed, because you can end up tripping over yourselves because everybody wants to help and there's no coordination around that help. So I just want to say that those who are offering to support the restoration from health perspective, we will be happy to guide you and to provide you with the appropriate guidance as it relates to that. I want to close by thanking the healthcare workers. You know, they are not unaccustomed to emergencies and to going beyond the call of duty. They have been very resilient and have really demonstrated their commitment to protecting the country. So I want to just use the opportunity on behalf of the government to thank them and to just ask them to continue on this trajectory and that they have our support in delivering and protecting the Jamaican people. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Tufton, for that. You actually answered every question that we had in the chat today. There were mental health questions, what's going on with the hospitals. You've answered everything without us even having to go to questions. So thanks to you and to the Ministry of Health team for all the work that you are doing. I am going to actually stop before the question and answer. I have some questions here that we need to go. Most of them are to you, Evan, that I need to ask. And there's one more I'm getting, Minister Tufton, from you. You'd have heard us speak of the National Emergency Operations Center, which is here. There are a lot of individuals that are there and they're working really, really hard. They're coordinating with the parish coordinators. You see them down there with their radios. They have a lot of equipment where they can easily be deploying resources across the country. They have trained for this. They have worked really hard on this. And so you've been hearing a lot from the ministers, but there are some really great patriots that are here. They've worked really hard for this country. And I just wanted to bring up the lead of some of those entities that are in our Emergency Operations Center here at ODPEM. Of course, I'm going to ask you if you could please stand here so that the cameras can pan to you, because Jamaica wants to know who you all are. And as I say your name, you can come up. And I'm going to probably go in that order. Commissioner Stuart Beckford from the Fire Brigade. Hi, Commissioner. How are you? I know, but the Fire Brigade is going to be absolutely central to any rescue operations that we're going to be doing across the country. And so we want to acknowledge the Fire Brigade team that's downstairs in our Emergency Operations Center. We also have Marilyn McDonald, Manager, Community Renewal for JPS. JPS is also here. So we know when things are down, and JPS is coordinating with us. We have other entities like the NWA and other groups too. And so thank you too, and your team, for being here. We also have, and you can all stay up here, you don't have to come down, they can pan out to you. we also have Commander Alvin Gale from the Jamaica Defense Force. They are here. You see the JDF gentlemen across the building. They are being led by you, and you're doing a fantastic job and just working to coordinate all the areas that JDF will help with in any type of recovery effort. JDF will be central to it. And so they're already here and doing coordinations from now. We also have Dr. Ellington from the JCF, superintendent from the JCF. The JCF is here too. They know what's going on. They know where there is danger. They're coordinating. They're getting their troops out as best as possible. The members of the JCF, the police force, will be out. They'll be deployed as necessary. So don't even think about it. I know what some people are thinking about the JCF. They are here. They're monitoring. They're out there and monitoring, and we can divert resources very easily. These are just some of the people that are working downstairs. Mr. Thompson, you should join them. ODPEM cannot do this without ODPEM. ODPEM is really central to all of this. And they all have families. Look at them. They have families. And this is just a few of them. Downstairs is full. It's a lot of people in the room coordinating. And they are here for us. And I would like to also add someone who is not willing to come up. Rohan, come on up. You see Evan here all the time, but Rohan is really doing a lot of work. Rohan is here. He is always here. And he is the one that comes in the room and tells me, okay, the storm is starting to turn, or it's still going west. And so we have up to the minute information right here, and it goes out to the parish coordinators through these lovely people who are here. Health too. We have a Minister of Health rep here all the time. They come in shifts, but there's always someone from the Minister of Health. We are coordinating. So if we know there's a problem in a particular area and that we need to mobilize resources in a hospital, we can do so. Look at their faces, all working tirelessly for Jamaica. And we want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you all. All right. So, having said that, and thank you again, we are going to go to the questions. And I see some from Emily Shields. I'm going to give you all of yours, Evan, that I have. The first one was, and this is from Emily Shields, she wanted to know that the system, you said that the system is 100 miles away or south of the island. And she asked if it continues to move at 3 miles an hour. Yes, that's very slow. I can walk faster than that. Does that mean it will be about 33.3 hours before it makes landfall? Or how close to land must it be before hurricane force wind is felt? And someone else was asking, why has this moved so slowly? They want a little bit of lesson meteorological class on why this would move so slow when we're used to hurricanes moving so fast. Evan?
Okay, thank you very much for the questions, Emily. Let me explain first of all, the reason for the slow movement is that the steering current is weak. Basically, there are some currents in the atmosphere that would generally steer the direction of movement of these systems. And it depends on a lot of the other features that exist at the same time. I spoke earlier about the high pressure centers, the low pressure centers, frontal systems. If they exist, they tend to influence the direction and the speed of movement. So for instance, if there are two large high pressure areas that are north of the Caribbean area, and there is a frontal system that extends between the two, and they are, if the front is moving toward the east, it would tend to drag that system because it is a low pressure system. If there is nothing that is allowing it or causing it to be steered in that general direction, but you have the high pressure areas above it that are preventing it from moving, then it doesn't get a chance to move northward, which would be the normal recurvature that takes place, but it would continue to move west until it gets that chance to turn. So it really, the hurricanes generally move in in that direction toward the west, but to the north, and making that recurvature. But if there is something blocking it, it will keep moving west, but not as decisively, because it really wants to move north. And so that kind of explains it. So when it starts to move, it's because it gets that break. It gets a chance to move because what was blocking it is receding or moving out of the area. The next question was about the, the 33, yes, the speed of movement, and why is, and does it mean that it will take 33 hours to get here? Really, I did mention it's moving slowly now, but after this turn, it's expected to move much faster as it moves toward the northeast. And that is because, again, the steering current is going to be pulling it in that direction because of another feature that exists that will allow it to be pulled to the north. So if there is a frontal system that is in the area to the north, then because that is there and it is taking advantage of the break between the high pressure systems, then that will pull it faster in the direction. And so it's expected to move faster. I tried to simplify these press briefings because I don't want to get too technical where I lose people who really need the information, but I hope that is made clear to you. Oh, hurricane winds only extend from the center about 45 kilometers. That's about 30 miles. So when it gets 30 miles from the coastline, that's when you start to feel those winds. And then, of course, it will take you have to calculate the speed of movement, and as it moves toward the north, how long you will continue to experience those winds. But the center would have to have passed 30 miles from you again as it moves away before you start to move away from those hurricane force winds being experienced. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a question for Minister Tufton. It's on what should pregnant women do if you're in an advanced state of pregnancy and this hurricane is coming. What do you do? Do you head to the hospital? Do you stay home? What do you do? I'm told the answer is to call Minister Tufton. That's what Minister Mackenzie says, but I think there's a better answer to the question.
Okay, so having second-hand experience on this, not direct experience. No, but the first thing we'd advise is that you consult with your physician and allow the physician to guide you. There's still an opportunity so to do. The communication channels are open. So if it's in the public health system, you can call the 888 One Love number. That's a universal number that's available. And if you are in a private arrangement with your physician, then certainly call your physician. Ideally, if you are close to delivering, then the hospitals will make arrangement, or the doctor with the hospital, to house you so that, assuming any circumstances that require hospital care, there's no need for the logistics of movement. That's, I think, is a standard approach. But the doctor provides the best advice, and I'm not that kind of a doctor, so I wouldn't dare to hazard that kind of advice. I just want to say that it's important that you protect yourself again. We can fix, as doctors, medical doctors that is, we can fix injuries, but we can't fix regret. And so it's important for you to just take care of your families and ensure that extra precaution is taken. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Are there any other questions from the media here? Okay. Need the microphone? Anybody has a microphone? We have a question. Microphone. Is it on?
Mike, okay, great. Good evening, everyone, ministers in the room. My name is Twyla Whelan. I am from the Jamaica Information Service. I have a series of questions, and these questions are not only from me, but from audience members viewing our live stream. So one of the first questions, I believe, would be to ODPEM, and it has to do with the website. It's showing that some sites, some shelters are closed. Is there any clarity that can be provided on this, or is it a case where some of them are up to capacity, or is there a glitch with the system? We just want to be clear. That's the first question.
All right, he's going to answer. We're going to take the series together because we do know that some of our news stations need to break off now.
Well, as you have heard from Minister, not all our listed shelters are open. At this point in time, shelters are open dependent on what is happening. We have a set number that is currently open, roughly 79. And as the system progresses, more persons will go into shelter, so there will be a need for more shelters to be open. So the update is based on the shelters that are open. And we continue to update that listing as the other shelters come on stream.
While I have you, Mr. Thompson, last year during burial, the disaster emergency communication system was particularly critical and very, very helpful in coordinating emergency response. Is it still up and running for
that is up. It's ideal. Minister spoke to that as well, that the system is housed at the ODVEM, and it is currently being manned by the Jamaica Fire Brigade. We have gone through all our protocols in doing our radar check. It's working extensively. So that's a main part of our operation. It's a critical part of our operation, because without communication in times of crisis, you're dead in the water. So we have ensured that is a mainstay, and that is something that will be used extensively throughout the operation in response to Melissa.
Perfect. And finally, from our viewers, they wanted to know what parishes will be first affected. The people on the live stream wanted to know which parish the storm is going to affect the most. Mr. Thompson?
Which parishes would be affected the most? All parishes, first of all, will experience some impact from this system. This means heavy rainfall, this means strong winds, hurricane force winds, even affecting sections. The hurricane force winds will be restricted mainly to the western half of the island. But the tropical storm force winds would cover the entire island. And that is only because the hurricane force winds only extend 45 kilometers from the center, and it is moving only over the western part, going as far as St. Anne in the north. So we do not expect that sections of Portland and St. Thomas, Kingston, St. Andrew, St. Catherine would really experience any hurricane force winds at this stage, based on how it is. But the storm surge, again, there are specific areas, and that would be along coastal areas to the right of the center on the southern coastline and to the left of the center on the northern coastline.
Okay, thank you all. There's just one last one, and I'll answer it because Minister had already answered it. It was, how are the evacuation efforts going in places like Rocky Point and Portland Cottage in particular? And those are actually going well. Minister Mackenzie had been monitoring those, and persons were in fact heeding the evacuation orders. And so we are encouraged by that, and we ask others who may not be doing the same to follow suit also. All right, so I don't see any other hands up, and so we are going to close this press briefing now. And I'll just say something. I was on an interview earlier with international media, and they asked me what would Jamaica want to say to the world at this time. And it was a hard question, but there was a flag, and I remembered our flag, and I remembered the colors of the flag, and I remember the black in the flag, which stands for hardship, the green for the beautiful green land that we have, and also the gold, which is for the bright sunshine. And what I said to them was, we are a people that are resilient. We have always had hardships. And today, tomorrow, the day after, as we go through Hurricane Melissa, will be days of hardship. But we know, we have confidence that after this storm, the green land will emerge to us again, and that the sun is going to shine. And so as we go to bed tonight, we know that God is with us. God has always been with us, and he will continue to be with us. And we will pray, and we'll get through this together, and there will be beautiful sunshine after this. Thank you all, and God bless Jamaica, land we love.
If you don't like missing out on the latest shows but still enjoy classic hits, then Global TV Group 358 is your perfect match. Global TV Group 358 isn't just another channel, it's your ultimate TV experience. From breaking news to binge-worthy dramas and timeless classics, we've got it all. Our unique blend of original content and global favorites means there's something for everyone. And guess what? With GTVG's seamless streaming, you can watch anywhere, anytime. Plus, our interactive features let you be part of the action. So, whether you're a seasoned binge watcher or a casual viewer, Global TV Group 358 is here to keep you entertained day and night. Don't just watch TV, experience it with Global TV Group 358. Subscribe now and never miss a moment.